future. On top of that lump sum payment, people saw their ongoing benefits go up by an average of $4,320 a year. Let's break that down. That's an extra $360 every single month. For a retiree on a fixed income, that is absolutely life-changing. That could be your groceries for the month, your car payment, or covering those rising utility bills.
And here's where the long-term significance really hits home. When you take that extra monthly money and you factor in cost of living adjustments over a person's entire retirement, the total lifetime financial impact for some people will be more than $300,000. That is an absolutely staggering amount of money. It transforms someone's retirement from a state of constant worry to one of stability and dignity. That's the real power of fixing an injustice. It echoes for decades. Now, the success of the Fairness Act didn't just stop there. It created what our source material calls a catalyst effect. It set a powerful precedent, and it inspired this whole new wave of reform proposals, each one built on the same basic idea: find an injustice in the system and deliver a targeted government remedy to fix it.
The first and biggest of these ripples is the Social Security 2100 Act. Now, while the Fairness Act solved a specific problem for a specific group of people, this proposal takes that same spirit and applies it to the much broader challenge of retirement security for all Americans. It really feels like the next logical step.
So let's look at the key investments here, because these numbers are huge. First, a $2,400 annual benefit increase for all 70 million current and future beneficiaries. That's a $200 raise every month across the board. Second, it changes how the annual cost of living adjustment, the COLA, is calculated. It switches to a formula called the CPIE, which is a much better way of tracking inflation for seniors because it's based on what they actually spend their money on, like healthcare. And finally, it creates a stronger safety net by boosting the minimum benefit to 125% of the poverty level. This act is all about expanding that idea of fairness to everyone.
All right, the next proposal inspired by this movement tackles a totally different problem: historical neglect. The Supplemental Security Income Program, or SSI, is an absolute lifeline for about 8 million of our most vulnerable citizens: the elderly, the blind, and people with disabilities. But get this, its benefits haven't been seriously updated since 1972. The SSI Restoration Act uses the same model as the Fairness Act to finally correct this.
And the investments here are so targeted and so profound. First, it would raise the monthly benefit all the way up to 100% of the federal poverty level. That's a massive increase. But look at this next one: updating the asset limits. For decades, a person couldn't have more than $2,000 in assets to their name to qualify for help. This act raises that to $10,000, finally letting people have a small emergency fund without getting kicked off the program. It is such a precise and frankly common sense remedy for a clear injustice. Beyond just boosting payments, this catalyst effect also inspired proposals that are all about removing these counterproductive rules that actually trap people in poverty. The idea is simple: stop penalizing people for trying to save a little money or build a better life. This is about the government getting out of the way of people's financial security. So here are 3 proposals that follow that exact logic. The first one raises those ancient asset limits we just talked about. The second, the Marriage Penalty Elimination Act, would stop punishing people with disabilities just for getting married. And then there's the boldest idea, which would remove asset limits altogether. Each one targets a specific rule that, whatever its original intention, just ends up holding people back. So this brings us to our final section. We've seen the incredible impact of the Fairness Act, and we've seen the proposals it inspired. But these new ideas aren't just random hopes. They're actually following a clear, repeatable blueprint for making huge policy changes happen. A blueprint that was forged by the success of the Fairness Act itself. And here it is, that 6-step blueprint in action. First, you have to identify a clear, really understandable injustice, like the WEP and GPO. Second, you build the case for why the government has to be the one to step in and fix it. Third, you mobilize public support. Fourth, and this is a big one, you show that the solution can get support from both sides of the aisle. Fifth, you prove the economic benefits. And finally, you design and deliver that precise, targeted relief that actually solves the problem you identified way back in step 1. This is the roadmap from a good idea to an actual law.
And you know, this quote from the source material just says it all perfectly. The Fairness Act did so much more than just send checks to 3.1 million people. It proved that government can and will act when justice demands it. It cleared a path for future reforms by giving us a successful real-world example to follow. And it created this incredible momentum that is now driving all the other proposals we've talked about today.
And that really leaves us with a final, forward-looking question. Now that this blueprint for change exists, a proven method for identifying an injustice and delivering a massive targeted government fix, what other long-standing problems could it be used to solve? The Fairness Act gave us an incredible answer, and in doing so, it gave us a whole new set of questions to ask.
You know, today we're going to dive into a story that, yeah, on the surface, it's about legislation, it's about benefits, but really it's about something way deeper: the transformation of human lives. It's the story of a massive shift from just surviving to actually truly thriving. And it all starts with a single powerful feeling.
Just let that sink in for a second. Imagine that's your reality. This one sentence, it just perfectly captures the core conflict, right? The daily emotional state for thousands of retired public servants before everything changed. It frames retirement not as this golden reward, but as a constant grinding struggle against a tide of things you can't do.
So who are we talking about here? Who are the people at the heart of this story? Well, we're talking about folks who built their entire careers on a foundation of public service. They signed up for a life with purpose, and they truly believed that all that dedication would be rewarded with a secure, dignified retirement. It was the promise they worked their entire lives for. I mean, think about it. These are the pillars of our communities. Teachers who sparked curiosity in generations of kids, police officers who kept us safe, firefighters who ran towards danger when everyone else was running away. Their whole careers were defined by having authority, by shouldering immense responsibility, and by a deep, deep commitment to other people. But for so many of them, the reality of retirement was, well, it was a brutal shock. That promise of security, it just evaporated, and in its place was a daily battle. This was a time when retirement wasn't about enjoying the fruits of your labor, but about just getting by. It was a life lived in survival mode. And this contrast is it's incredibly stark. These people went from a life of making a real impact to one of feeling totally powerless. Can you imagine? The same person who once made split-second life or death decisions was now forced to pour all their mental energy into calculating grocery costs. The person who was a hub of their community now slowly, painfully withdrawing from social life because they couldn't afford it. And living like this day in and day out, it creates what psychologists call a mindset of scarcity. Now, this isn't just about not having enough cash. It's a deep psychological state. Every single choice you make, from what you eat to whether you see a doctor, it gets filtered through this lens of, can I afford this? That constant mental math is absolutely exhausting, and over time, it just chips away at your confidence, at your sense of self-worth. And this wasn't just in their heads. This mindset had real physical consequences you could see and touch. A leaky roof just keeps leaking. The old refrigerator breaks down, but replacing it feels impossible. Your health becomes something you react to, not something you proactively manage. You ignore symptoms because a diagnosis might be too expensive. And socially, you start turning down invitations, missing family gatherings because the cost is just too high. And a quiet, painful isolation starts to set in. This quote, man, it just hits the nail on the head. Living is about joy, about growing, about being spontaneous. Surviving is about reacting, defending yourself, just enduring. These retirees became experts at navigating hardship, constantly changing their plans just to stay afloat. All the energy that should have gone into enjoying their golden years was spent bracing for the next storm. But then, after years and years of this struggle, something finally shifted. A single piece of legislation came along that would completely rewrite the story for these public servants. This was the moment the whole narrative pivoted from despair to hope. Then came the Social Security Fairness Act. Now, this law was designed to get rid of some rules that were unfairly cutting the Social Security benefits for a lot of public servants, people like teachers and firefighters who also had pensions from their jobs. And for the people it affected, oh man, it was so much more than a policy change. It was a lifeline. It was an acknowledgement of their service, a restoration of a broken promise. It was the catalyst that would change everything. And just like that, we enter the after chapter. The whole tone shifts. It's like going from a world of muted gray to one of full, vibrant color. This wasn't just about getting a bigger check. It was about a renaissance of the human spirit. The change was like a domino effect, an empowerment revolution. It all started with financial security being restored, of course, but that was just the first piece. From that foundation, choice and confidence came roaring back. And with that confidence, people started reinvesting in their health, in their social lives, and with that renewed energy, Old hobbies and passions were rediscovered. All of a sudden, the future wasn't something to be afraid of. It was a wide open canvas of possibility. Let's just take healthcare for a second as a perfect example. Remember how decisions were made from a position of weakness? That got completely flipped on its head. Instead of putting off doctor's visits, people started seeking preventative care. Instead of ignoring a nagging symptom, they got things checked out early. The whole decision-making process shifted from what is absolutely necessary for me to survive to what is best for my long-term well-being. It was a huge move from a position of weakness to one of strength. And with that massive weight finally lifted, it got its color back. Spontaneity came back. That amazing freedom to just say yes to a last-minute lunch invitation or a trip to see the grandkids. Creativity, which had been dormant for so long, reawakened. People picked up paintbrushes again, dug out old guitars, started gardening. They began to travel, to explore, and, maybe most importantly, to reconnect with their communities by volunteering and mentoring, sharing a lifetime of wisdom. That phrase really says it all, doesn't it? A renaissance of joy. It wasn't just an improvement, it was a rebirth. Joy was no longer some fleeting moment you tried to snatch between worries. It became the new baseline. And that joy seeped into everything, from the simplest daily routines to the biggest life plans. So as we start to wrap this up, it's so important to look beyond just the numbers. The true impact of an act like this isn't measured in dollars and cents. It's measured in the quality of human life. It's measured in the restoration of dignity and in the flourishing of the human spirit. This right here, this distills the entire story down to its absolute core. The fundamental shift was from that mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance. And not necessarily an abundance of wealth, but an abundance of possibility. A life that was defined by constraint became a life defined by opportunity. And a retirement that had been spent feeling powerless was transformed into one of strength, agency, and control. And that's really what this is all about. This is what the Social Security Fairness Act ultimately achieved. It created the conditions for what you might call human flourishing. It's a term that goes way beyond just being happy or comfortable. It's about restoring dignity. It's about reclaiming the power to choose your own path. And it's about renewing that sense of possibility. It's about letting people live not just a long life, but a vibrant, meaningful one. And so, we end on this question. If you judge a society by how it treats its citizens, what does it say when the people who served us most, our teachers, our firefighters, our police officers, are finally given the security they need to flourish in their later years? The story of this act suggests that the true measure isn't just about a pension check. It's about the promise of a retirement that's filled with dignity, opportunity, and joy.
All right, let's talk about the Social Security Fairness Act, but we're not going to get bogged down in the political jargon. Today, we're getting right down to what this actually means for your wallet. We're talking real dollars and cents, the money you've been missing out on and the money you could be getting back. We'll break down the lump sum payments, those crucial monthly boosts, and how it all grows over the long run. So let's jump right in.
So let's just get straight to the heart of it. If you've worked in public service, as a teacher, a police officer, a firefighter, you've probably heard of the windfall provision. And let's be honest, it's been taking a bite out of the benefits you worked so hard for years. So I want you to ask yourself a serious question. How much money has this thing actually cost you? I mean, really think about it. The answer, well, it might just shock you.
Okay, let's not beat around the bush. Here's a number for you. The windfall elimination provision, or WEEP, can slash your monthly benefit by almost $600. Now that's a lot every month, right? But stretch that out over a 20-year retirement, and you're looking at a staggering potential loss of over $140,000. Just let that sink in for a second. This isn't pocket change. For so many people, this is the line between sleeping soundly at night and waking up worried about bills. It is a huge, huge deal.
All right, so here's our game plan for today. First, we'll quickly cover what the Fairness Act is actually fixing. Then, the really good part, how you can reclaim your lost benefits. After that, we'll look at your new monthly budget, see how this money grows over the long haul, and finally, what all of this means for your entire retirement picture.
Okay, first up, let's explain the Fairness Act. And to really get what a game changer this is, we first have to talk about the two rules that have been causing all the headaches, the WEP and the GPO.
So you've really got two different culprits here, and they hit people in different ways. On one hand, you have the WEP. Think of this as the one that comes directly for your personal benefit, the one you earned. It could chop off nearly $600 a month, but then you have the GPO, the government pension offset. And honestly, this one could be even more brutal.
It went after spousal and survivor benefits, and in a lot of cases, it didn't just reduce them, it eliminated them entirely. Poof, gone. Can you imagine losing your partner who served the community their whole life and then finding out you get zero from their Social Security? It's just a devastating financial blow. So that's the problem. Now how do we fix it? That brings us to Section 2, reclaiming what's yours. See, the Fairness Act isn't just about making your future checks bigger. It's about going back and correcting the past. And it does that with something really powerful, a retroactive lump sum payment. And I really want to emphasize this point because it's so important. This lump sum payment, it is not a bonus. It's not some kind of government gift. No way. This is your money. It's a tangible acknowledgement that your benefits were unfairly reduced, and this is the government making it right. Think of it as back pay that you are owed. It's about justice, plain and simple.
Okay, so what does justice actually look like in dollars? Let's get specific. Imagine you're a teacher, and WEP has been taking $400 a month for the last 5 years. Boom! You could get a check for $24,000. Or maybe you're a police officer who's been hit with a $500 reduction for a decade. That's a $60,000 payment. And just look at the GPO scenario. A surviving spouse who lost out on $1,800 a month for 8 years, that's over $172,000. I mean, these aren't just numbers on a screen. This is life-changing money. Absolutely life-changing.
All right, that one-time payment is amazing, right? A huge course correction. But what happens the month after that? That's what we're talking about next. It's all about the ongoing monthly increases that are going to change your budget and your life for good. This is where real financial security starts to get built back up month after month. Let's start with a pretty modest example. Say your benefit goes up by $300 a month. Doesn't sound like a lottery win, right? But just add it up. Over a year, that's an extra $3,600. In any retirement budget, believe me, that is a huge deal. But what does $3,600 really mean? Well, think about it like this. That could be half your grocery bill for the entire year, just gone. Or maybe it's a full year of prescription costs, completely covered. For a lot of folks, that's enough to pay off their annual property taxes, or cover their car insurance and all the oil changes and new tires for the year. All of a sudden, those nagging, stressful bills that might keep you up at night, they're just taken care of. Now let's bump that up a bit. What if the increase is $400 a month? Well, now we're talking about $4,800 a year. That's even more breathing room in the budget. And if we go up to a $500 monthly increase, which, let's be real, is a reduction many people have actually been dealing with, that's an extra $6,000 in your pocket every single year. Okay, so what can you do with an extra $6,000 a year? Now we're moving beyond just covering the bills. We're talking about really improving your quality of life. You can finally get that new roof you've been worrying about. Or you could take the whole family on a vacation they'll never forget. You know what's huge? It could cover all those healthcare costs Medicare doesn't touch, like major dental work or new glasses. Or maybe you want to help your grandkids with college. You see the difference? This is the jump from just scraping by to actually enjoying your retirement. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. We've talked about the one-time payment and the monthly boost, but that monthly boost isn't going to stay the same. Oh no, it is designed to grow, and this long-term growth, well, this is one of the most powerful and honestly most overlooked parts of this whole thing.
Let me introduce you to your new best friend, COLA, the cost of living adjustment. This is what makes your benefit grow year after year. Let's stick with our $400 increase. In year one, sure, it's $400. But with an average COLA, 10 years down the road, that's not $400 anymore. It's over $512 a month. And 20 years out, it's more than $655 a month. So your restored benefit doesn't just tread water against inflation, it actually gets bigger and more powerful over time.
So let's zoom out and look at the big picture. Let's even forget about COLA for a second, just to keep it simple. That extra $400 a month, over 15 years, that's an extra $72,000. Over 20 years, you're knocking on the door of $100,000. It's $96,000. And if you have a 25-year retirement, that's an extra $120,000. And please remember, this is brand new money on top of everything else you already get. It's a fundamental change to your entire retirement income. So that brings us to our final thought. When you put it all together, that big lump sum check, the bigger monthly payments, the way that money grows over time, you realize we're not just talking about numbers anymore. We're talking about something way deeper. We're talking about a completely new outlook on retirement, one that's built on security, dignity, and genuine freedom. Just look at how that one $500 increase can totally reshape a monthly budget.
It's not just one thing. That single payment can handle a big chunk of your healthcare bills, cover your groceries, and pay for utilities, and you'd still have money left over. That's your fun money, your travel fund, your savings. It changes the entire equation, from constantly worrying about where the money's going to being in control.
And the ripple effects, they just go on and on. It means you can actually retire with confidence, not with a knot in your stomach. You've got a safety net for things like long-term care. You can finally kill off that last bit of debt and start building a real nest egg. You can be the grandparent who helps out, who treats the family. And maybe most importantly, you have the freedom to just live, to travel, to pursue a hobby, to do the things that make all those years of hard work worthwhile.
You know, after all these numbers and charts, it really just boils down to one simple, powerful idea. This is real money, and it's going to make a real difference in real lives. That's it. That's the whole point. It's about fixing something that was broken and finally honoring the service of so many people. So, I'll leave you with this to think about. When your benefits are finally made whole again, when all this money is put back into your pocket over the years, what does financial security actually mean to you now? What new doors open up? What old worries can you finally let go of? It's a whole new ballgame, a new financial reality, and it's one you absolutely have earned.
Today, we are going deep on Social Security. You know, the recent Social Security Fairness Act was a huge deal, a landmark piece of legislation. But what if I told you it wasn't the end of the story? What if it was actually just the beginning? We're going to connect the dots and see if that single act kicked off a whole new era of Social Security expansion.
So that's the big question we're tackling today. Is the story of Social Security reform over? Or is it really, truly just beginning? The Fairness Act was this monumental victory, for sure. But what if it wasn't the finish line? What if it was actually the starting pistol for something much, much bigger? All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at that crucial first dot, the Social Security Fairness Act. Then, we're going to explore 5 more dots that have emerged. These are 5 huge proposals that are on the table right now. After that, we'll connect all these dots and reveal the absolutely staggering financial landscape they create. And finally, we'll ask the big question, what does this all mean? Is a new era for Social Security really about to begin? Okay, let's get into it. Our first dot, the Social Security Fairness Act. Now, it's really important to see this not as the end of the story, but as the critical starting point, the proof of concept that really sets the stage for everything else we're about to talk about. So, what did it do? Well, the Fairness Act made a massive correction for 3.1 million public servants. We're talking teachers, firefighters, police officers, people who were being penalized by these really outdated rules. And it wasn't just a small fix. It delivered a whopping $17 billion in one-time retroactive payments. For a lot of people, that was a truly life-altering sum of money. But it didn't stop there. On top of those one-time payments, it created $11.2 billion in new annual increases. That's an ongoing boost, averaging out to about $3,600 per person every single year from here on out. You add it all up, and the total 10-year financial impact comes to $129 billion. I mean, that is a massive investment, but its real significance, its true power, goes way beyond the money. And here's the key takeaway, the most important part of this whole section. The Fairness Act proved something. It proved that large-scale, meaningful financial interventions are actually possible. It showed that it could be done. And that's why it's the first dot on our map, setting the stage for even bigger ideas to come. Okay, so with that first dot firmly on the page, let's dive into the core of this. Let's look at the 5 other major proposals that could follow in its footsteps. This is where the picture of a potential new era really starts to come into focus. The first emerging dot is a really big one. It's called the Social Security 2100 Act. And this isn't a small tweak. This is a broad, comprehensive proposal designed to strengthen the entire system for literally everyone. So what's inside? Well, first, it delivers a universal 2% benefit increase across the board. It also switches the cost of living adjustment formula to something called the CPIE, the Consumer Price Index for the elderly. That's a huge deal because it more accurately reflects the real costs seniors face, especially for things like healthcare. It also raises the minimum benefit to keep people out of poverty, and, this is critical, it extends the system's solvency for another 75 years. So what does that mean for your wallet?
Well, for the average person, these changes add up to an extra $5,514 over a decade.
And the sense of scale here is just dramatic. Think about it. The Fairness Act helped 3.1 million people. The 2100 Act? It would impact over 70 million beneficiaries. That's a 22-fold increase in the number of people helped. You can see the shift in thinking right there, from a targeted fix to a universal enhancement for everybody.
All right, let's move to our next dot and see how it builds on that idea. This is the Social Security Expansion Act, and it takes the concept of a universal increase and pushes it even further. Now, this proposal has some things in common with the 2100 Act. It also uses that fairer CPI-E formula for COLAs and makes sure there's a strong minimum benefit. But here's the headline: a direct across-the-board benefit increase of $2,400 a year for every single beneficiary. Simple as that. That's an extra $200 in your pocket every single month. And the financial jump here is just huge. That direct monthly increase brings the 10-year value for an average beneficiary to over $21,000. That is nearly 4 times the financial benefit of the 2100 Act we just talked about. A massive difference. Now, let's shift gears a bit and look at a proposal that's laser-focused on some of America's most vulnerable citizens. This is our third dot, the Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, Restoration Act. This act is designed to pull millions of people out of poverty. First, it raises the base benefit all the way up to 100% of the federal poverty level. It also finally updates the asset limits. You know, those limits haven't changed in decades. This bill would raise them from a measly $2,000 to $10,000 for an individual. That means people can finally have a small emergency fund without losing their benefits. And it ends some really cruel penalties, like getting penalized just for a family member bringing you a bag of groceries. The impact of this would be absolutely transformative. We're talking an average of nearly $64,000 per recipient over 10 years. For millions of people, this wouldn't just be a help, it would be a direct pathway out of deep poverty. Our fourth dot also focuses on SSI, but it tackles a different, really frustrating problem. It's called the SSI Savings Penalty Elimination Act, and it is all about empowering financial independence. What's so remarkable about this one is how cost-effective it is. Simply updating those outdated asset limits would cost just $10 billion over a decade. Now, that sounds like a lot, but it's less than 8% of what the Fairness Act cost. It's a small price for a profound impact on people's ability to save for their future. Now, the direct value here is about $1,250 per beneficiary over 10 years. But honestly, the real value isn't the dollar amount. It's the freedom it provides. It's the ability to save for a car repair or a medical bill without that constant fear of losing your essential income. It's a small change with a huge impact on quality of life. And that brings us to our final dot, which addresses a fundamental issue of fairness and, frankly, human dignity. It's the SSI Marriage Penalty Elimination Act. The problem is simple, and it's absolutely devastating. Right now, if someone on SSI gets married, their spouse's income is counted against them. This often causes them to lose their benefits completely. So people are forced to choose between the love and companionship of marriage and the income they need to literally survive. This act would finally end that penalty for the 300,000 people it affects. This change would be worth over $16,000 per person over a decade. But more importantly, it offers the freedom to get married without facing a devastating financial punishment. It's a powerful reminder that reform isn't just about money, it's also about dignity. So, we've laid out all the individual dots. We have the Fairness Act, the 2100 Act, the Expansion Act, and the 3 big SSI reforms. Now, let's take a step back and connect them. Because when we do, the true scale of this potential new era becomes, well, it becomes breathtakingly clear. This table really puts the 10-year financial impact into perspective. I mean, look at this. The values range from over $5,500 for the 2100 Act all the way up to a staggering $63,000 for the SSI Restoration Act. It just shows how different the scale and focus of these proposals can be. So who benefits from all this? If you take all these proposals together, even accounting for some overlap, they would directly impact over 150 million Americans. That is nearly half the entire country. And the total investment? The total 10-year investment across all these proposals is a mind-boggling $2.4 trillion. Remember the Fairness Act, the big one we started with? This combined figure is nearly 20 times larger than that. But here's the thing. Proponents argue this isn't just a cost. It's an investment, because this $2.4 trillion would go directly into local economies. People will spend it, and economists project that it could generate over $4 trillion in total economic activity, supporting growth and jobs all across the country. So, okay, we have all these ambitious proposals, all these dots on the page. The question is, what could actually connect them? What are the real-world catalysts that could turn these ideas from just paper proposals into actual law?
Well, there are three major forces pushing this forward. First, you have politics. Seniors are an incredibly powerful voting bloc, and their voices matter. Second, a future economic crisis could force Washington's hand to secure retirement for millions. And third, you have simple demographics. The aging of the population creates an unavoidable imperative to act.
To really understand the future, it helps to look at the past. Social Security has never been a static thing. It was created way back in 1935. It was expanded to include disability benefits in 56. The SSI program was created in 72. It was reformed in 83. The 2025 Fairness Act is just the latest milestone, the latest dot in a long, long history of evolution.
And that brings me to this quote from Steve Jobs, which just perfectly captures what we've been talking about. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. Looking forward right now, it's hard to see how all these proposals will connect. But from some point in the future, looking back, the path might seem obvious. Every one of those past milestones was just a single dot at the time. The Social Security Fairness Act is our most recent dot. But, as we've seen today, there's a clear pattern emerging, a whole series of new dots being drawn. The core idea here is this. The Fairness Act was the catalyst. It completely reset expectations for what is possible, and it threw open the door to this much broader, much more ambitious vision for the future.
And so we end right where we began. Will future generations look back at this moment in history and see the Fairness Act not as a conclusion, but as the single dot that started it all? The one that proved the government could act, the one that opened the door, and the one that began a new era of Social Security expansion for all Americans. The dots are connecting, and the picture that's emerging is one of profound, incredible possibility. Today, we are diving deep into something huge that's affecting millions of public servants, the Social Security Fairness Act. For years, so many of you have watched your hard-earned benefits get hammered by some really complex and, let's be honest, unfair rules. Well, all of that is changing. And in this breakdown, we're going to get into the details and show you exactly what this means for your finances. If you've worked as a teacher, a firefighter, a police officer, or really any state or local government job that wasn't covered by Social Security, this question probably hits pretty close to home. You paid into the system at other jobs, you earned your pension through years of public service, and then you find out that these two rules, the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, were taking a massive chunk out of the benefits you were counting on. It really felt like a penalty for choosing a career in public service. But here is the fantastic news. The Social Security Fairness Act is here to make that right. It gets rid of those provisions, and the impact is just monumental. We're not talking about a small tweak here. This is a fundamental restoration of what you've earned. And today, we're not just going to talk about ideas of fairness. We're going to get into the weeds, look at the actual formulas, and show you the exact dollars and cents so you can see your new financial reality. Okay, so here's our game plan. We've laid this out to be as clear as possible. First, we'll do a quick recap of those old rules, the WEP and GPO, just so we're all on the same page about what's being fixed. Then we'll talk about the new act itself. After that, we're diving into the big changes, one by one, showing you with real numbers how your WEP reduction and GPO offset are completely gone. And crucially, we'll walk through how to figure out your retroactive pay. Finally, we'll look at the big picture, what this means for your financial future. Let's get right into it. So first up, the old unfair rules. To really, truly appreciate just how good this change is, we have to understand the problem we're coming from. For decades, the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset have just been a source of incredible frustration and financial hardship for so many retirees. So let's quickly define what they were. First, we have the windfall elimination provision, or WEP for short. This rule went directly after your own Social Security retirement or disability check. The idea, way back when, was to stop a so-called windfall for people who also got a public pension. But in the real world, it felt more like it was punishing people who had careers in both the public and private sectors. It wasn't eliminating a windfall, it was creating a shortfall.
And then you had the other one, the government pension offset, or GPO. Now this one was a little different. It didn't mess with your own retirement benefits. It went after the spousal or survivor benefits you were supposed to get from your spouse's work history. For a lot of people, especially surviving spouses, this rule was absolutely devastating. It often just wiped out an entire source of income. Which brings us to the good part, Section 2, a new Fairness Act. This is the turning point, folks. After years and years of people fighting for this legislation was passed to do one thing: get rid of those two rules we just talked about. It's a clean, direct solution designed to give you back what you've earned.
The mission here is so powerful because it's so simple. It's not just adjusting WEP and GPO, it is repealing them, getting rid of them completely. That means the Social Security Administration has to calculate your benefits based on your entire work history without applying those unfair reductions. The goal is straightforward: make sure public servants get the full Social Security benefits they're owed. Period.
Okay, now for the part I know you've all been waiting for. Let's finally get into the numbers. Section 3, your WEP production is officially erased. We're going to break down the exact calculation and show you just how big a difference this repeal makes to your monthly check. Okay, so to get this, you just need to know a little bit about the Social Security formula. Think of it like a recipe. For a standard retiree, the most important part of that recipe replaces 90% of their average earnings. But the WEP rule came along and totally messed with that recipe. It slashed that 90% number all the way down to as low as 40%. Now with this new act, that reduction is just gone. You're back to the full standard 90% recipe, just like everybody else. The penalty has been totally erased. And to put a real number on that, just look at how the math worked out. By slashing that one part of the formula, WEP could cost someone with average earnings almost $589 every single month. I mean, that's what this analysis shows. That was money you earned, taken right out of your check before you even had a chance to see it. But here's the flip side. That loss is now your gain. For that exact same worker, the Social Security Fairness Act means an immediate, ongoing increase of $588.80, month after month. That's over $7,000 a year back in your pocket. This isn't some theoretical idea. This is real financial restoration. Just let that sink in for a second. All right, let's keep going. If WEP was a pretty deep cut, GPO could be a total knockout, especially for surviving spouses. We're going to walk through just how damaging this thing was and why getting rid of it is such a huge deal for so many families. Just take a close look at this table. It shows you exactly how GPO worked its magic. The rule was your spousal benefit gets reduced by 2/3 of your public pension. So in this example, you're eligible for a $1,200 spousal benefit, but you also have your own teacher's pension of $1,800 a month. Well, the GPO calculation takes 2/3 of that pension, which is $1,200, and subtracts it from your Social Security benefit. And what's the result? $1,200 minus $1,200 is zero. Your entire spousal benefit was just gone. And here is the payoff. Under the Social Security Fairness Act, that entire devastating calculation is history. It no longer exists. There's no offset, there's no reduction. So in that last scenario, you now get your full $1,200 spousal benefit on top of your public pension. It's a complete restoration. For thousands of surviving spouses, this is nothing less than a financial lifeline. Okay, this brings us to the huge question I know is on your mind. That's great, but what about all the money I already lost? Section 5 is all about that, calculating your retroactive pay. The act is retroactive, which means you are owed money for those underpayments. Let's see how you can get an idea of what that lump sum might look like. You know, the formula for your back pay is actually really straightforward. You just take the amount your monthly benefit was being cut by, which is now your new monthly increase, and you multiply it by the number of months you were underpaid since the act went into effect. So if your WEP reduction was, say, $400 a month, and you were underpaid for 18 months, your retroactive payment is $400 times 18, which is $7,200. And this number, wow, this just shows you the staggering potential, especially for people hit hard by the GPO repeal. Imagine a survivor whose $1,500 monthly benefit was completely zeroed out by the GPO. If that happened for 2 years, that's 24 months, the math is simple, $1,500 times 24. That comes out to a retroactive lump sum payment of $36,000. For so many people, a check of this size is truly life-changing. It's a chance to pay off debt, handle home repairs, or just breathe a little easier. And that brings us to our final section, your benefits moving forward.
Getting a big retroactive check is amazing, no doubt. But the real power of this act is the long-term compounding effect it's going to have on your financial security for the rest of your life.
So here's a concept that a lot of people overlook: the compounding power of the annual cost of living adjustment, or COLA. Every year, Social Security benefits go up a little bit to keep pace with inflation. Before, that COLA was being applied to your reduced benefit. Now, it's being applied to your full, restored benefit. So let's say your restored benefit is $1,800 instead of a reduced $1,200. A 3% COLA on $1,200 is a $36 raise, but a 3% COLA on your full $1,800 is a $54 raise. That difference might seem small in just 1 year, but you stretch that out over a decade or two, and the gap just gets wider and wider. You're not just getting your money back, you're getting all of its future growth too. So let's zoom out and look at the big picture, your new retirement plan. For years, that Social Security slice of your income pie was way smaller than it should have been, which forced you to lean more heavily on your pension and your personal savings. Now, Social Security is a full, robust, and reliable piece of your financial foundation again. That gives you stability, predictability, and a whole lot of peace of mind. It lets you plan for your future with so much more confidence.
And really, that's the bottom line. This isn't just about getting a bigger check. It's about reclaiming a piece of your financial destiny that was unfairly taken from you. With these funds finally restored, both every month and in a lump sum, you have new options, new opportunities. It's a chance to take a fresh look at your budget, your goals, and your dreams for retirement. So the question we'll leave you with this is, now that fairness has finally been restored, what does your future look like?
All right, today we're going to break down the Social Security Fairness Act. This is a piece of legislation that could completely change the financial future for millions of public servants. We're going to dig deep into the numbers and see what this really means for the teachers, the firefighters, and the police officers who've dedicated their lives to our communities. So let's just start with a single massive number: over $1 million. Now, that's not a lottery jackpot. That is the potential lifetime increase in Social Security benefits for just one person, a surviving spouse, if this act passes. And I know what you're thinking, how is that even possible? Well, stick with us and we're going to show you exactly how we get to that life-changing number, step by step.
But before we get into the solution, you really have to understand the problem. You see, for decades, millions of public servants have had their Social Security benefits cut because of a couple of rules you may have never even heard of, but they've had a huge, huge impact.
Okay, so what are they? They're called the Windfall Elimination Provision, or WEEP, and the Government Pension Offset, or GPO. Now, the original idea was to stop people from double dipping, but here's how it actually works in the real world. WEEP cuts into a worker's own Social Security benefits that they earned just because they also have a public pension. And then you've got GPO, which is often even tougher. It can slash or completely wipe out the survivor benefits you should be getting from your spouse, all because you have your own public pension. These rules have been financially devastating for so many people who served our communities. So what's the fix? Well, it's called the Social Security Fairness Act. It's a bill that has support from both sides, and its goal is really, really simple: to reverse the effects of those two provisions. So what does this act do? Well, its main mission is a full repeal. This isn't some little tweak or a small adjustment. It's about completely getting rid of both WEEP and GPO. And this is a really key point. This bill doesn't create any new or special benefits. It would simply give public servants back the Social Security benefits they already earned and paid for, putting them on the same level as every other worker in the country. Okay, now we get to the really good stuff, the heart of this whole thing. We're going to walk through 3 different scenarios, person by person, to show you the real-world dollar-for-dollar gains people could see. We'll look at the immediate monthly boost and the incredible power of these changes over an entire retirement.
So let's meet our first person. Picture this, an elementary school teacher. She spent 30 years in the classroom, just retired. She's getting her teacher's pension. But because of her service, the windfall elimination provision has taken a huge bite out of her Social Security check.
So look at these numbers. The change would be instant, and it's big. Her WEP-reduced check of $1,100 a month would jump to the full $1,650 that she actually earned. That's an extra $550 every single month. Annually, that's another $6,600 in her pocket. On top of that, the Act proposes retroactive payments, which for her means a one-time check for over $16,000. But here's where it gets really powerful. When you look at the long game, let's look at this over a 25-year retirement and factor in the cost of living adjustments, or COLAs. You see, COLAs are based on a percentage, so a percentage of a bigger number is, well, it's more money. That annual COLA on her new, higher benefit is much larger than it would have been on her old, reduced one. And that difference just keeps growing year after year. Over her retirement, that adds up to an extra $60,000, just from the COLAs alone.
So what's the grand total for our teacher? A staggering $241,500. This isn't just a little extra spending money. This is a complete game changer for her retirement.
All right, next up, let's look at a police officer. He just retired after 25 years on the force. And just like the teacher, his earned Social Security benefits have been cut down by the web. His story has some similarities, but the numbers are all his own. He's also seeing that $550 monthly jump, restoring his benefit to the $1,750 he rightly earned. That's the same $6,600 a year boost. For him, the retroactive payment is even higher, almost $20,000, based on what was held back from him over the years. Now, let's project his retirement over 22 years. And again, you have to look at the power of those cost of living adjustments. Because his starting point is now higher, every single one of those annual COAs is bigger. That compounding effect all by itself adds nearly $53,000 to his total. You put that together with the base increase and the retroactive pay, and you've got another massive financial transformation.
So for our police officer, we're talking a lifetime gain of nearly $218,000. Think about that. That's the difference between just getting by and having real peace of mind in retirement.
Okay, our final scenario. This is one of the toughest situations out there, and it's all because of something called the Government Pension Offset, or GPO. This is a firefighter's surviving spouse. Her husband paid into Social Security his whole life. But because she was also a public employee with her own pension, the GPO wiped out her Social Security survivor benefit completely.
And just look at this difference. It is absolutely night and day. Before this act, her monthly survivor benefit is zero, nothing. After the GPO is repealed, it's restored to the full $2,100 she was owed. She goes from zero to over $25,000 a year. That's not just a raise, that is a lifeline. And on top of that, a retroactive payment of more than $50,000. It's a financial rescue.
Now, if you thought the other numbers were big, just wait. When you project this over a 28-year retirement, the numbers are just staggering. The base increase alone is over $700,000. But look what happens with the COAs. When you're starting from zero, every single COA is pure new money. Over those 3 decades, the yearly adjustments add another $250,000 to her lifetime total.
And that right there, that brings us all the way back to the number we started with, a total lifetime impact of over $1 million. This isn't about balancing a budget. This is about giving someone a life of stability and dignity that they earned.
These numbers are just mind-boggling, right? But what do they actually mean for a real person? Let's move beyond the spreadsheet and talk about the human story behind all this data. For our teacher, that extra $550 a month isn't just a number. It means she no longer has to choose between getting a tooth fixed and getting her car repaired. She can finally get the dental work she's been putting off. She can buy a reliable car. She can build an emergency fund. It's about moving from constant stress to actual security. For the police officer, it's about quality of life. He can finally afford the knee surgery he desperately needed, moving from a life of chronic pain to one where he can actually play with his grandkids. He can pay his property taxes without anxiety. He feels like his decades of service are finally being valued. And for the firefighter's spouse, the change is just life-altering. She goes from the very real fear of losing her home to security, from needing food banks to filling her own grocery cart with healthy food. She can buy a car, get her independence back, and go visit her family, ending years of feeling isolated and alone. So you see, it's never just about the money, is it? It's about what that money can do. It translates directly into better health, a secure home, and real independence. It allows people to reconnect with their families, their communities, and the passions they had to put aside. Okay, so when you pull the camera back, all of this adds up to a much bigger statement about what we value as a society. For its supporters, the Social Security Fairness Act is about creating a legacy of justice. When you zoom all the way out, the total estimated impact is just massive. We're talking a projected lifetime gain of about $1.2 trillion for the more than 3 million people affected. Now, a number this big obviously brings up some serious questions for policymakers about the long-term future of the Social Security Trust Fund, and that's a huge part of the debate surrounding this bill.
But for supporters of the act, passing it would send a crystal clear message that public service is valued, that we're correcting a historical wrong. It's a commitment to the people who educated us, protected us, and ran towards danger for us. You know, this really is the core idea behind the whole thing. It's about moving millions of retirees from a state of just surviving, scraping by, worrying, making impossible choices, to a place where they can actually thrive and enjoy the retirement they worked so hard for. The numbers are clear. The financial impact is impossible to ignore. But this act is really trying to restore something more than money. It's about dignity. It's about honoring a lifetime of service. And that really leaves us with one final question to think about, right? What is the true value of a life lived with that kind of security and dignity?
We are breaking down one of the biggest changes to your retirement in decades, the Social Security Fairness Act. Let's get into it. You know, for years, there's been this shadow hanging over the retirement plans of so many people. You served your communities, you paid your dues, but when it was time to claim the Social Security benefits you also earned, you hit a wall. A lot of you saw those hard-earned benefits slashed, sometimes down to almost nothing, all because you also had a public pension. If that story sounds painfully familiar, you are not alone. And that long-standing injustice is exactly what we're going to unpack today. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the old, unfair system. Then we'll talk about the arrival of the Fairness Act. We'll dig into the retroactive payments that fixed past problems and what this all means for your future benefits. And finally, we'll walk through exactly what you need to know to take action. Okay, so to really get why this new law is such a huge deal, we have to go back and understand the problem it solved. For decades, there were these two specific rules that, frankly, created a system that penalized people for their public service.
And the culprits had these two acronyms, WEP and GPO. The Windfall Elimination Provision, or WEP, cut into the Social Security retirement or disability benefits that you earned yourself. The Government Pension Offset, or GPO, did pretty much the same thing, but for spousal or survivor benefits. Now, the idea was supposedly to stop double dipping, but in reality, it was just a blunt instrument that hurt people who moved between public and private sector jobs or whose spouses worked in the private sector. It just caused real, unnecessary financial hardship for a lot of families.
And who got hit the hardest by this? Well, it was the absolute backbone of our communities. We're talking about teachers, police officers, firefighters, and just countless federal, state, and local employees who keep everything running. These are the very people who saw their retirement security put at risk by these old, unfair rules.
But then, after years and years of people fighting for a change, everything flipped. A landmark solution finally came through, and with it, a whole new era of fairness for public servants.
In January of 2025, the Social Security Fairness Act became law, and its mission was simple and powerful: to permanently, and I mean permanently, eliminate WEP and GPO. This wasn't some temporary patch or a small reduction. This was a full repeal, completely tearing down that wall that stood between millions of you and the benefits you rightfully earned.
And what's really incredible here is the speed. I mean, usually, putting a major law like this into action can take years, but not this time. The law gets signed in January. The Social Security Administration starts processing adjustments the very next month in February, and the entire retroactive payout was done by July. That kind of speed shows a real, powerful commitment to making things right, and making them right fast. So that brings us to the first massive tangible impact of this law, this incredible effort to correct decades of underpayments with a huge retroactive payout. See, this wasn't just about fixing the future, it was about settling the score for the past.
Just let that number sink in for a second. Over 3.1 million people. That's not just a statistic. That's millions of families who had been shortchanged, some of them for years. And the Social Security Administration had to find every single one of them and figure out exactly what they were owed.
And the total amount they paid out? A mind-boggling $17 billion. That's the sheer scale of the correction. Billions in earned benefits were finally put back into the hands of the people who deserve them. It really shows you the true financial cost of those old rules.
And if that wasn't impressive enough, get this. The SSA managed this huge, complex job sending billions of dollars to millions of people, and they finished the whole thing 5 months ahead of schedule. That is a truly rare and impressive display of government efficiency.
Now, averages are one thing, but the individual impact is where this story really hits home. Depending on how long you've been retired and how much your benefits were cut, these lump sum payments were absolutely life-changing. We're talking about people getting checks for $10,000, $15,000, and in some cases a whole lot more. This was money that could wipe out debt, handle a major home repair, or just finally provide a real financial cushion for a secure retirement.
So that big retroactive payout was a massive correction of the past. But honestly, the most profound change from the Fairness Act is what it means for your future. We're talking about permanent, ongoing increases to your monthly Social Security checks from now on. Let's just pause and look at this side by side because the difference is night and day. Before, your benefits were unfairly cut. Now, you get your full earned amount. Before, your retirement income was always uncertain thanks to these crazy reduction formulas. Now, you have a permanent increase for the rest of your life. And maybe the most important part, the old system felt like you were being penalized for choosing public service. This new system makes it clear that your service is valued.
And here's something that is absolutely critical for your long-term planning. This increase isn't a one-and-done deal. Your new higher monthly benefit is now the baseline, the starting point, that's going to grow every single year with the cost of living adjustments, or COLA. This is so powerful because those annual percentage increases now get applied to your full benefit amount. Over time, that compounding effect is going to give your retirement income a significant boost and protect your spending power from inflation.
The impact went way beyond just current retirees. For years, so many public servants never even bothered applying for Social Security because they knew the old rules would just wipe out their benefits anyway. Well, this act changed everything. More than 278,000 people have now filed brand new claims, stepping forward to get the benefits they had basically given up on. And the Social Security Administration has kept up that incredible pace. Of that huge wave of new applications, 92% are already processed. So for the 8% still under review, rest assured, the agency is working hard to get those done. It just shows this ongoing commitment to making sure everyone gets the benefits they are now rightfully owed.
Okay, so we've covered the past, the present, and the future. Now let's get practical. What do you need to do? This last section is all about the actionable steps to help you through the process.
If you're listening to this and thinking, hey, that's me, I held off on applying because of the old rules, then listen up. It is absolutely not too late to file your claim. But, and this is important, you shouldn't delay. The date you apply can affect when your benefits actually begin, so taking action now is really key to getting everything you're entitled to.
And the process itself is pretty straightforward. Your best starting point is the official Social Security website, SSA.gov. If you're applying for your own retirement benefits or for spouses' benefits, doing it online is by far the fastest and easiest way. Now, for survivor benefits, those cases are a little different and they need special handling. So for those, you'll need to apply by calling the SSA directly on the phone. And you are not in this alone. The Social Security Administration has set up dedicated resources to help you out. They have a special web page with answers to frequently asked questions and payment trackers. They've also got special phone lines with extended hours, staffed by people who are experts on the Fairness Act. So please, be sure to use them if you have questions.
When you zoom out, it's important to see the bigger picture here. These billions of dollars in restored benefits aren't just sitting in bank accounts. This money is flowing directly into local economies all across the country. It's paying for groceries, housing, healthcare, it's supporting local businesses and jobs. It's just a powerful reminder that when you fix an injustice, it can also be a really powerful economic boost.
In the end, this act is about so much more than money. It's a restoration of fairness and of dignity to millions of people who dedicated their entire careers to serving the public. But it does leave us with a bigger question for the future, doesn't it? Now that this decades-old penalty is gone, how else can we rethink our policies to better value and reward the choice to serve our communities?
Today, we're going to look at something a little different. We're going way beyond the usual policy debates and the financial figures. We're going to explore the real, human-level transformation that the Social Security Fairness Act brought about. We're not just looking at what it changed in people's bank accounts, but what it actually changed in their day-to-day lives. Wow. Just take a second to let that sink in. This single sentence, it just perfectly captures the reality for nearly 3 million dedicated public servants. It speaks to this quiet, constant weight that kind of defined their retirement. And to truly get what this act did, we first have to understand the world they were living in before it came along. So let's start right there. Before this act, life for so many wasn't necessarily about outright poverty, but it was about this constant grinding calculation. It was a life lived right on the edge of financial stability, where just one little unexpected thing, a car repair, a sick pet, could throw everything into crisis.
Can you imagine starting every single day with this immediate mental checklist of your expenses? Well, that was the norm. It was this constant, low-grade psychological weight, kind of like a background hum of anxiety that never ever truly went away. It colored every experience, you know? It made it impossible to ever really relax. Even the happy moments were kind of tinged with this awareness of just how vulnerable they were. And this anxiety, it wasn't some abstract feeling. Oh no, it led to concrete, absolutely impossible choices. And we're not talking about choosing between luxuries here. We are talking about choices between the most basic necessities. I mean, do you fill a crucial prescription this month, or do you make sure you have enough healthy food to eat? Do you fix that leaking roof, or do you make sure the heat stays on for the winter? These are just devastating decisions to have to make after a lifetime of service. So what this created was a constant state of triage. It went way beyond just careful budgeting. It became this ongoing crisis management. Every single dollar had to be justified, every purchase had to be weighed, and every unexpected bill was a source of legitimate fear. Life basically became this defensive game of just plugging financial holes instead of, proactively building a secure and happy retirement. And that financial stress, it didn't just stay in the bank account. It seeped into every single corner of life, creating this awful cascade of negative consequences. People started turning down invitations because they couldn't afford a gift or even the gas to get there, which of course leads to social isolation. The constant stress physically wore down their bodies. Dreams of traveling or picking up a hobby were just shelved indefinitely. It was the slow erosion of connection, of health, and ultimately of their own self-worth. But that is not where the story ends. This daily reality of quiet struggle, it became the backdrop for a major legislative shift, a real turning point that set a profound transformation in motion. And then came the Social Security Fairness Act. By repealing the provisions that unfairly cut the earned benefits of public service workers, the entire landscape just began to change. And yeah, the immediate impact was financial, but the true transformation was happening in all those invisible aspects of life. So the very first and honestly the most profound change was psychological. Remember that constant background hum of anxiety we talked about? Well, it started to fade. The future, which once felt like a source of danger, started to look like a place of possibility. That tightness in the chest just eased. And this wasn't just about having more money. It was about the freedom from the fear of not having enough. This initial psychological relief, it was like the first stone dropped in a calm pond. It created this powerful, positive ripple effect that began to touch every single aspect of a person's life. It actually reversed that negative cascade we saw earlier and started building this new momentum toward well-being. You can totally see how it's all connected, right? It all starts with peace of mind. That peace reduces chronic stress, which directly leads to better physical health. And with better health and less financial worry, people have the energy and the means to reconnect with family and friends. And once those foundational needs are met, they finally have the space to rediscover the passions that actually bring them joy. It's a virtuous cycle. It's a beautiful thing. Let's look a little closer at health for a second. With that constant stress lifted, people actually started sleeping better. Chronic pain began to ease. But it was practical too. They could finally schedule the doctor's checkups they've been putting off for years. They could fill prescriptions without even hesitating. They could afford fresh, healthy food instead of the cheaper, less nutritious stuff. Suddenly, healthcare shifted from being a source of anxiety to a tool for proactive self-care. And what about relationships? Well, that isolation began to just melt away. People started saying yes again. Yes to meeting friends for lunch. Yes to hosting a family dinner. Yes to visiting the grandkids who live a state away. They could re-engage with their communities, join clubs, volunteer. The financial barriers that had forced them into disconnection were gone, and they were replaced by the simple joy of shared experiences. And with all that came the rediscovery of self. Hobbies that had been dismissed as unaffordable luxuries were embraced once more. The artist could finally buy new paints. The musician could get their instrument repaired. The gardener could invest in their outdoor space. And look, these weren't frivolous things. They were essential parts of who these people were, sources of fulfillment that had been lying dormant for way too long. So the impact wasn't just in one area, it was a holistic, all-around improvement, from better health and stronger relationships to a more secure home and the freedom to pursue passions and engage with the community. The act touched every single significant part of a person's life, creating a more complete and fulfilling existence. And this, right here, this gets to the absolute core of the transformation. Because while money was the tool for change, the change itself was about something so much deeper. It was about restoring dignity and a fundamental sense of justice. Ultimately, the act helped redefine what financial security truly means. It's not just the absence of financial terror, it's the presence of possibility. It's the platform that allows for human flourishing, that freedom to live without constant calculation, to connect with others without barriers, and to contribute your unique gifts to the world. This is such a powerful shift in mindset, isn't it? Before, money was the enemy. It was a source of constant worry and limitation. After the act, it became what it should be, a tool for living well, for planning with optimism instead of fear, for building a life of purpose and joy, instead of just a life of survival.
And perhaps most profoundly, the act offered a sense of validation. I mean, think about it for a second. These are individuals who dedicated their entire careers to public service. Teachers, firefighters, police officers, often forgoing much higher private sector salaries to do so. To then be penalized in retirement, well, it just felt like a deep injustice. This act sends a clear message. Your service mattered, your sacrifice was seen, and you have absolutely earned a retirement of security and dignity.
So we'll end with this question. The story of the Social Security Fairness Act isn't just about a law. It's about the very real human impact of policy. It shows us that true fairness isn't just about balancing budgets. It's about building a society where a lifetime of service is honored with a retirement of dignity, security, and the freedom for every single person to truly flourish. So what is the true measure of that? That's something worth thinking about. It's set to restore benefits that were reduced for years. But, this is way more than just a policy change. It's the beginning of a whole new financial chapter for you. So with these restored benefits on the way, the big question is, how do you turn this opportunity into a real solid plan for your financial security? Well, that is exactly what we are going to break down today. So let's start with a big number, shall we? This is what a lot of folks are looking at as their new chapter begins, a retroactive payment. The average amount is $6,710. This one payment is your most immediate opportunity, and of course, the first big decision you're going to have to make. And that really is the question at the heart of all this, isn't it? This isn't just about getting a check in the mail, it's about taking that money and giving it a purpose. It's about turning a one-time financial event into a strategic plan for the rest of your life. So what's your plan? Stick with me because by the end of this, you're going to have a clear framework to build one. All right, let's dive in. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll talk about what this new financial chapter really means. Then, we're going to tackle the two huge pieces of this, what to do with that retroactive payment and how to get the most out of your new monthly increase. After that, we'll zoom out and look at long-term strategies, and we'll finish up with something that's absolutely crucial, the mindset of wealth. For years, so many public servants have had to deal with this nagging financial stress, knowing their Social Security benefits were being unfairly cut. Well, this act changes that whole story. It is a huge moment, a real shift from just trying to get by under a cloud of uncertainty to actually grabbing a real opportunity. This is your chance to build a financial peace of mind you have absolutely earned. Okay, so let's get right into it. The first thing you're going to face is what to do with that lump sum retroactive payment. And for a lot of people, this could be the largest single amount of money they've ever received at one time. That's why having a clear, prioritized plan is not just a good idea, it's essential. And while that average payment is around $6,700, you've got to understand that for many, it's going to be a lot more. We're talking about amounts that can honestly change your life. $15,000, $20,000, maybe even higher, all depending on your specific situation. A check that big doesn't just plug a few holes. It can lay a completely new foundation for your future. And that's why it is so important to have a plan in place before that money even hits your bank account. So what's the game plan? Well, financial experts suggest thinking of it like a 4-step mission. Step 1, stop the bleeding. Wipe out that high-interest debt. We're talking credit cards with crazy interest rates. Paying that off is like getting an immediate, guaranteed return on your money. Step 2, secure your foundation. Take care of those home repairs you've been putting off, the leaky roof or the old furnace, and any important health needs. Step 3, build a safety net. This is where you create an emergency fund. And finally, step 4, once you're secure, you can put your money to work for you by investing for the future.
Now, let's be really clear about what an emergency fund is, because this is probably the most important building block for your financial security. It's simple, really. It's just 3 to 6 months of your essential living expenses, sitting in a savings account where you can get to it easily. This isn't for investing. It's your financial shock absorber. It's the money that stops a car repair from turning into a total financial disaster. So if your core bills are, say, $3,000 a month, you're shooting for a fund between $9,000 and $18,000. That retroactive payment could literally build that cushion for you overnight.
Okay, let's shift gears now. We've talked about the one-time payment. Now let's look at the benefit that keeps on giving. That retroactive sum is like the down payment on your new financial life, but the ongoing monthly increase, that's the steady income that's going to keep it going. So we're moving from a one-time choice to creating a new normal for your budget every single month. On average, that monthly increase is going to be about $360. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not exactly winning the lottery, but wait, let's break down the real impact here. That's an extra $4,320 a year. Over a decade, that's over $43,000. And here, this is the most powerful part. That's before we even talk about cost of living adjustments, or SOLAs. This new higher benefit becomes your new starting line. So every single future SOLA will be calculated on a larger amount. Think about it. A 3% SOLA on your old lower benefit is one thing, but a 3% SOLA on your benefit plus this extra $360 every month, that's a bigger raise year after year after year. It compounds your growth over time. It's a huge deal.
You know, one of the smartest things you can do with this new income is to give every single dollar a job. Instead of just letting that extra $360 disappear into your checking account, you tell it where to go. So for example, maybe you put $100 into a vacation fund. Another $100 goes into a fund for future home repairs so you're not caught off guard. $100 for healthcare costs. And hey, maybe $60 for something that just makes your life better right now, like a hobby. This way, you're making sure that money is working for you, intentionally.
All right, so we've handled the lump sum. We've got a plan for the new monthly income. Now it's time to zoom out. With some of those immediate money worries taken care of, we can lift our heads up and start looking at the horizon. This isn't just about being stable next month. It's about building real, lasting security for the next 10, 20, 30 years. What this new financial stability really gives you is the chance to make a huge mental shift. For so long, maybe your focus was just on the immediate stuff, covering the bills, paying off debt, dealing with whatever popped up. You were playing defense. Now you can start to focus on future security. You can think strategically about your retirement goals, create an estate plan, and prepare for long-term care. You get to finally go on offense with your money. And remember, this new income affects everything else in your financial life, which makes right now the perfect time for a full financial checkup. Look at your retirement withdrawal strategy. Maybe you can take less out of your other accounts and let them grow longer. Definitely review your estate plan. Are your will and beneficiaries up to date? Maybe now is the time to look at long-term care insurance. And please, talk to a tax professional about how that lump sum payment might impact you. Finally, think about how to protect your money from inflation, beyond just the COLA. And that brings us to our final section, which is honestly the most important piece of this whole puzzle. We can talk about numbers and plans all day long, but none of it really works unless we talk about the human side of it. This is about making a conscious shift in your mindset, moving away from a feeling of financial stress and into a place of security and control. This quote really just says it all, doesn't it? The biggest win here isn't a new car or a fancy vacation. It's the quiet, deep psychological relief that comes from just knowing you're going to be okay. It's being free from that constant nagging worry in the back of your mind about how you're going to make ends meet. That feeling of peace, that is the real payoff from all this planning. And hey, it's really important to know that a sudden change in your finances, even a good one like this, can bring up a lot of different emotions. You might feel a huge sense of relief, but you might also feel a little anxious about making the right choices. That is perfectly normal. Just be patient with yourself as you get used to this new reality. And remember, reaching out to a financial advisor isn't a sign that you don't know what you're doing. It's a sign of wisdom. They're there to help you navigate it all. So, we end with a question for you. We've gone through the strategies, the numbers, and the mindset, but now it's about taking action. This is your opportunity to write your next chapter. So what is the very first concrete step you are going to take to build your new financial future? It doesn't have to be huge. Maybe it's just making a list of your debts or making a phone call to a financial advisor. Whatever it is, take that step. The power is officially in your hands.
So today,
we're not just going to look at some dry piece of legislation. We are diving into a story. And it's a story that spans decades, touching the lives of millions of teachers, firefighters, police officers, public servants. This is the emotional journey behind the Social Security Fairness Act.
Yeah, this isn't some abstract policy analysis. This is about people's lives, their security, and their long fight for dignity. It's a very human story about what happens when a system that's supposed to provide security instead creates just profound personal hardship.
All right, so every story's got a beginning. For millions of American public servants, that beginning felt less like a starting point and more like a deep and personal betrayal. This is where it all starts.
I want you to just imagine this for a second. You spent your entire career serving your community. Maybe you were a teacher, shaping young minds, or a police officer, keeping neighborhoods safe. You played by the rules, paid your taxes, you even contributed to Social Security from other jobs you held along the way. You finally retire, you're looking forward to a secure future. And then, a letter arrives from the Social Security Administration. You open it up, expecting to see the benefits you've earned. But instead, the words on that page deliver an absolutely crushing blow.
So, what was actually in that letter? Well, it was the devastating impact of two federal provisions, the windfall elimination provision, or WEEP, and the government pension offset, GPO. Now, the idea behind these rules, supposedly, was to prevent people from double dipping with a public pension and full Social Security. But the reality was that your earned benefits from other work were slashed, and sometimes down to zero. This was the source of the conflict, the technical reason behind all the heartbreak.
And look, this was so much more than just a financial miscalculation. For the people affected, it felt like a punishment. It was a real slap in the face. They felt betrayed by a system they had trusted their entire lives. The message they got, loud and clear, was that their years of public service were somehow worth less than work in the private sector. It was a deep emotional blow that just devalued a lifetime of dedication.
So that initial shock, it didn't just fade away. It quickly gave way to a new and very difficult reality. The policy started showing up in the day-to-day lives of millions, creating years of genuine hardship in what really became Act 2 of this long story.
And this is where the policy really hit home. We are talking about tangible, gut-wrenching choices. A retired teacher having to literally decide between buying her necessary prescription drugs or a full cart of groceries for the week. A former firefighter putting off a leaky roof repair year after year because the money just wasn't there. Grandparents unable to visit their grandkids across the country because a plane ticket was now a luxury they just couldn't afford. Each one of these decisions became a constant, painful reminder of the injustice, just layering daily stress and resentment right on top of the financial strain.
This really highlights the huge chasm between what was expected and what actually happened. The retirement these public servants had earned was supposed to be one of peace, dignity, and stability. But instead, what Weapon GPO delivered was a daily dose of anxiety and fear. There's a deep humiliation in having to ask for help after a lifetime of being self-sufficient. That constant financial strain, it just robbed them of the secure retirement they were promised and replaced it with sleepless nights and anxiety about the future.
But out of all this hardship and frustration, something powerful began to grow. This is the crucial turning point in our story. This is where victims of a flawed policy transformed into advocates, and a quiet, personal struggle became a national fight for justice.
After years of just quietly suffering, feeling totally alone, a powerful question started bubbling up. What can we actually do to change this? This simple question, it marked a huge shift in mindset, from resignation to resistance, from just accepting an unfair reality to demanding a better one.
And that question, that was the spark. The anger and frustration that had been simmering for years finally turned into this focused determination. People realized they didn't have to just accept this. They could fight back. And, maybe most importantly, they started to realize they weren't alone in this fight. And this is how they found their strength, by finding each other. Big national organizations for teachers, police, and firefighters, they became these powerful hubs for advocacy. But just as important were the countless grassroots groups that sprang up in communities all over the country. In these groups, people shared their stories, they comforted each other, and they organized. Finding out that they shared this struggle, it provided immense comfort, and more importantly, immense strength.
Now, I gotta be clear, this was not a quick or easy fight. The journey was measured in decades.
For years, advocates felt totally unheard. They went through countless legislative setbacks. Bills to repeal WEP and GPO would be introduced with so much hope, only to die in committee without ever getting a vote. It was emotionally devastating. But through it all, the community solidarity just got stronger. Grassroots movements gained more and more momentum, which led to a final, powerful push that Congress just couldn't ignore anymore. For a lot of the older advocates, there was this real fear they wouldn't live to see justice, which added this incredible urgency to that final effort.
And that final push led to this, the climax of our story. After decades of struggle, after countless letters, phone calls, and rallies, came the moment of vindication. The resolution so many had fought for so long.
January 2025. That was the moment. The Social Security Fairness Act was finally passed into law. For millions of public servants and their families, this wasn't just a date on a calendar. It was a landmark. It was the end of a long, painful chapter and the beginning of a new one. I mean, you can just imagine the tears of joy and the deep, profound sighs of relief.
Because the passage of the law was so much more than just a financial adjustment. It was an admission, the system finally acknowledging the injustice. For everyone who felt punished and devalued, this was the validation they had been denied for decades. It was a formal recognition that their service mattered, that their sacrifice was real, and that they deserved to be treated fairly.
But the journey didn't just end when the law was passed. It continued as this very personal journey of restoration. First, there was the anticipation, just anxiously waiting for the system to correct their records. Then came that profound moment of validation, seeing that first, correctly calculated Social Security payment finally hit their bank account. That's when the real healing could begin. The anger and resentment that had been a constant companion for years finally started to lift, making way for a sense of closure and peace that had been gone for far too long.
So ultimately, the Social Security Fairness Act didn't just restore funds, it restored dignity. It was a promise kept, a wrong that was finally righted. It affirmed the value of a lifetime dedicated to public service, and for so many, that was worth even more than the money itself. It really stands as a testament to the idea that ordinary people, when they unite in a just cause, can achieve extraordinary change. So as we close this out, I want to leave you with this question. This story of struggle and triumph is a really powerful one. So now that this particular injustice has been corrected, what is our collective responsibility to remember the decades of hardship and the tireless fight it took to achieve justice? It's a question worth reflecting on, not just for this story, but for any long battle for fairness. Big news is coming out of Social Security, and I mean really big news. We're not talking about rumors or proposals today. We're talking about a major, permanent increase to benefits that is officially happening right now. We're going to break down exactly what this means for millions of you. So, let's get right to it. You've probably been hearing the buzz, right? Chatter about a Social Security increase? Well, today, we're going to cut through all the noise and tell you what's actually going on, because this is one of the biggest financial updates for retirees in decades. And let me be perfectly clear. This is not a drill. It's not a proposal. It is real. It is a permanent change to your benefits, and the process is already in motion. We're going to get into exactly how this works, who gets it, and what the numbers look like. All right, so let's get into the details, the numbers behind this huge change. And listen, this isn't just your standard cost of living adjustment. No, this is a significant, lifelong boost to your monthly income, and it even includes a retroactive payment to make things right. Here's the number you really need to see. On average, we're looking at a permanent increase of about $360 a month. And I gotta stress that word, permanent. This isn't a temporary bonus. It's a structural change to your benefit calculation for life. That adds up to over $4,300 extra per year, every single year.
And that's not all. On top of that monthly raise, there's also a one-time retroactive payment. The average for this lump sum is around $6,710. This is designed to pay you back, to compensate for all those years of reduced benefits.
You know, it's so important to understand what this money really is. It's not some kind of government handout or a bonus. Think of it as a correction. This is money you earned, money you were always entitled to that is finally being restored. It's just making things right.
So, the big question is, who exactly gets this, and why is this happening now? Let's break down who qualifies for this incredible financial boost and the long-standing problem that's finally being fixed.
This change is specifically for our public servants.
You know who you are. If you dedicated your life to being a teacher, a police officer, a firefighter, a postal worker, or any other kind of state or federal employee, this is for you. For decades, you are the exact people who have been frankly unfairly penalized by the old rules.
So what was the problem? Well, it all comes down to two really unfair rules: the windfall elimination provision, or WEP, and the government pension offset, the GPO. The brand new Social Security Fairness Act has finally repealed these. For years, these rules have been slashing the Social Security benefits of public workers just because they also earned a pension. Getting rid of them is, well, it's monumental.
And let me tell you, this is not some small group of people. The Social Security Administration itself says that over 3.2 million people were being hit by these rules. That's 3.2 million beneficiaries who are now finally in the process of seeing their benefits corrected to the full amount they actually earned.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the logistics. You get the what and the why, so now let's cover the how and the when. How is this money actually going to show up? And what, if anything, do you need to do?
Okay, this is my favorite part. What do you have to do? Absolutely nothing. I'm serious. You don't have to fill out a single form. You don't have to make a phone call. You don't have to wait in any lines. The whole thing is completely automatic. The Social Security Administration is already doing all the work behind the scenes. Your only job? Just keep an eye on your My Social Security portal online and then expect that bigger payment to hit your bank account on your normal payday. It's that easy.
Of course, the next question is always, will this extra money mess up my other benefits? And the answer, thankfully, is a big resounding no. For most of you, these payments are completely tax-free, they will not make your Medicare premiums go up, and, this is a big one, this new income won't count against things like SNAP or housing assistance for at least a full year, so you get to keep what you gain.
And check this out, because this is the gift that keeps on giving. Right now, your annual cost of living adjustment, that COLA, is applied to your lower, reduced benefit amount, but with this change, all your future COLAs will be calculated on top of your new, permanently higher base benefit. It's like compound interest for your retirement. That $360 raise today means every single future raise you get will also be bigger.
Now, you know what happens when there's good news about money for seniors, right? The scammers come out of the woodwork. So we have to talk about how to protect yourself, because getting this money is one thing, keeping it is just as important.
I need you to burn this into your memory. This is the single most important rule. The Social Security Administration will never, ever, ever ask you to pay money to get your own benefits. They're not going to call, they're not going to text, they're not going to ask for gift cards or wire transfers. Your benefits are yours, period. No fees attached.
So please, watch out for these red flags. If anyone calls out of the blue asking for your Social Security number, scam. If they demand you pay them with a Target gift card, scam. If they threaten to cut off your benefits if you don't do what they say, total scam. And if they promise they can get you your money faster for a small fee, you guessed it, it's a scam. Just hang up the phone, delete the text. Protect yourself.
Okay, we've gone through all the numbers, the rules, and the warnings. So let's bring it all home and talk about what this really means for you. Not just in your wallet, but in your actual everyday life.
Because you know what? This is so much more than a check. For the millions of you who served our communities and then felt penalized for it, this is about respect. It's the system finally saying, we see you, we value what you did, and we're making it right. This is about restoring the dignity you earned over a lifetime of hard work.
And let's get real about what an extra $360 a month really does. That's the difference between affording your prescriptions or not. It's putting healthy food on the table without having to worry. It's finally paying off that credit card that's been hanging over your head. It's having a little cushion for when the car inevitably breaks down. But more than anything, it's just being able to breathe a little easier.
So, as we wrap this up, think about this. The Social Security Fairness Act corrected a major injustice that went on for far too long. It proves that big, meaningful change is possible. So the question is, what's next? What's the next big, fair change the Social Security system needs to make to truly take care of every American in retirement?
You've probably seen it all over social media, these incredible claims about a massive Social Security back payment. Well, today we're going to break down every single detail from those viral reports to figure out what is really going on. Let's separate the facts from the fiction.
All right, let's jump right in with the number that's got everyone talking, $6,710. Now, according to the sources we've looked at, this is the claimed average one-time back payment. The reports say for some people it's less, but for a lot of folks, it could be even more. It's a number that'll make anyone stop and pay attention.
And get this, the scale of this whole claimed program is just staggering. The reports are saying that over $15 billion have already been paid out, with another $6 billion supposedly in the pipeline right now. If that were true, we'd be talking about a massive financial event, a real lifeline for millions of people.
So what's the deal here? Where are these huge numbers even coming from? And what's the story they're telling about this supposed payout? Let's dig into the heart of the claims being made.
Okay, so the sources making this claim are really clear about what this money isn't. They say, look, this is not your regular annual cost of living adjustment, it's not some kind of bonus, and it's definitely not a stimulus check. They describe it as a one-time, retroactive back payment, meant to fix years of underpayments for people who've been affected by what they call unfair rules.
So what's supposedly the engine behind all this? Well, the sources all point to one piece of legislation, the Social Security Fairness Act. The claim is that it was passed and signed into law on January 5th, which kicked this whole thing off. Now, this is really important. Official congressional records show this bill has not actually been passed into law. But just so we can understand the rumor, let's look at what the bill would do if it ever passed.
The first huge change this act would make is getting rid of the windfall elimination provision, or WEP. For decades, this rule has cut the Social Security benefits for millions of public servants. We're talking about people like teachers, firefighters, just because they also earned a pension from their public service job. If the act passed, it would scrap that rule completely.
And the second piece of the puzzle is the Government Pension Offset, or GPO. The act also proposes to get rid of this rule, which is similar to WEP, but slashes spousal or survivor benefits for people who have their own government pension. So by repealing both WEP and GPO, the Fairness Act aims to deliver what its supporters call financial justice.
This brings us to the million-dollar question, right? Who would actually get this money if these claims were true? This is the part everybody really wants to know. Well, according to the reports, if you're getting Social Security, SSDI, or SSI, and your benefits were hit by WEP or GPO in the past, you'd be on the list. They say this covers about 3.2 million people, a lot of whom are retired public sector workers. And here's the key part of the claim. The whole process is supposedly automatic. No forms to fill out, no applications to send in.
Understanding the nuts and bolts of the claim is pretty important, so let's walk through exactly how these payments are supposedly being calculated, processed, and sent out according to these sources. So here's why the claimed payment is so big. The story goes that the law is retroactive. They say the processing is happening right now in different phases because it has to be done manually. These viral reports even mention a deadline to get all the payments out by the end of this month. But, and this is a big but, there has been absolutely no official confirmation of any of this from the Social Security Administration.
This little chart shows exactly how the math behind the rumor works. The sources say that getting rid of WEP and GPO would lead to a permanent monthly boost in benefits. On average, they claim, about $360 a month. So you take that boost and you multiply it over a hypothetical retroactive period and bam! You land right at that big back payment number. So the claim isn't just about a one-time check, it's about getting back pay for a permanent increase. How would the money actually get to you? Well, it would all depend on how you're already set up with the SSA. If you've got direct deposit, that would be the fastest way. If you use a Direct Express card, the money would just be loaded on there automatically. For anyone who still gets paper checks, that would take longer showing up in the mail. These are just the standard ways the SSA pays out benefits. Okay, now we need to cover some really crucial details that are included in these reports. It's so important to understand these points, especially the warnings, so you can protect yourself and your money. First and foremost, the sources say this over and over again, this supposed retroactive payment would be 100% tax-free. It would not count as taxable income.
Another major point they make is that this payment wouldn't mess with your eligibility for other government programs. That means things like SNAP, Medicaid, or housing assistance supposedly would not be reduced.
Okay, listen up, because this is probably the most important thing to hear today. Anytime there's talk about big money payouts, the scammers come out of the woodwork. The Social Security Administration will never, ever call you, email you, or text you asking for your personal information to release a payment. If anyone contacts you asking for your info or for money to get this payment, it is a scam. Just hang up the phone and report it.
A few other important details from the sources. They claim these payments would be safe from most garnishments, and that your Medicare benefits wouldn't change at all.
They also say you might get an official letter from the SSA, and that an appeals process would be available.
Whew! Okay, we've gone over a ton of information. So with all of this in mind, what is the single most important action you can actually take right now?
The advice is actually really simple and consistent across the board. Log in to your official My Social Security account at ssa.gov. That is it. Once you're logged in, just check two things. First, take a look at your payment history for any new or unexpected deposits. Second, just double-check that your mailing address and your direct deposit info are correct. Honestly, this is just good practice to do anyway.
This quote really gets to the core promise of these rumors, that this is all supposed to happen automatically. But here's the reality check. Since the legislation has not passed, these payments are not being processed. So the only thing you can and should do is make sure your official info is correct with the SSA. That way, if any real changes happen in the future, you'll be ready.
You know, this whole situation, whether it's a rumor or not, it really taps into a much bigger conversation. It's about financial breathing room and the hope for a fair system, which is exactly why these kinds of claims can spread like wildfire. And it leaves us with a final question to think about. Beyond any one-time check, what's the most important factor for your own long-term financial peace of mind?
Today, we're diving deep into what could be one of the biggest changes to Social Security we've seen in years. We're talking about a permanent, honest-to-goodness increase in your monthly benefits. You might have heard whispers about a big lump sum payment, but believe me, that is not the whole story. It's really just the beginning. Look at this number, $6,710. This is the average one-time retroactive payment that's at the heart of this whole proposal. Now, for some people, it could be more. For others, maybe a little less. But this is the kind of money that represents a correction that many feel is long, long overdue. And like I said, it would just be the start. So that's the real question, isn't it? Could a payment of that size make a difference for you? And what if I told you the plan is for that big check to be followed by a permanent raise every single month? Let's break down exactly what's being proposed, who would get it, and how this fix could literally change everything for millions of retirees. All right, to really understand why this money is even on the table, we have to take a step back. This isn't some bonus or a stimulus check. No, this is all about correcting what so many people see as a fundamental unfairness that's been baked into the Social Security system for way too long. You see it for decades. Two very specific and frankly very confusing rules have been slashing the earned benefits of public servants. Just imagine working your entire life, paying into the system, and then when you're finally ready to retire, you find out you're not going to get what you thought you earned. For millions of Americans, that's been their reality. So let's get into the weeds a little bit. The culprits are these two provisions, the windfall elimination provision, or WEP, and the government pension offset, GPO. WEP cuts into your own hard-earned benefits, and GPO, that one reduces the spousal or survivor benefits you were counting on. Now, the original idea was to stop double dipping, but critics have been saying for years that they just go too far and unfairly punish people for a career in public service. And who are we really talking about here? Well, we're talking about the very backbone of our communities. We're talking about teachers, police officers, firefighters, the people who run toward danger, not away from it. Postal workers, federal and state employees. Millions of dedicated people who were told that because of their service, they were somehow less deserving of the Social Security benefits they also paid for. And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? This gets right to the heart of the matter. This isn't about giving anyone a handout. It's about restoring money that people feel they rightfully earned. It's about the basic promise of Social Security. You pay in, and it'll be there for you. For these public servants, that promise feels broken. And that's exactly what this new proposal is trying to fix. So, how exactly would this fix work? Well, the proposal is really powerful because it has two parts. One part to make up for the past, and a second, even more important part to secure your future. You've got to understand both of them. The whole thing is centered on a piece of legislation called the Social Security Fairness Act. If this becomes law, it wouldn't just tinker with the old rules, it would get rid of them completely. The goal is to wipe WEP and GPO right off the books for good. And this is where it gets really good. The plan creates two key payments. First, that retroactive lump sum we talked about, averaging around $6,700 to cover what you were underpaid in the past. But here's the real story, the long-term solution, a permanent monthly raise averaging about $360 that gets added to your benefits every single month for the rest of your life.
And to really get a sense of how big of a deal this is, the proposal calls for an estimated $17 billion in retroactive payments. This isn't some small adjustment. We're talking about one of the largest financial corrections for retirees in recent memory, affecting more than 3.2 million people. I really want to hammer this point home because it's the most important takeaway. The lump sum payment would be justice for the past. But that permanent monthly raise, that's security for your future. It's not a temporary boost. It's a fundamental, permanent change to how your benefit is calculated from now on. Okay, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Let's talk numbers and what this would actually mean for your budget, for your day-to-day life. This is where you can really see the impact and start to think about what this means for your financial planning. So $360 a month, that's the average. And you know, for so many people, that's the difference between just scraping by and actually having a little breathing room. That's money for groceries, for prescriptions, for keeping the heat on in the winter, or maybe finally paying off a bill that's been hanging over your head. And when you zoom out and look at the whole year, the numbers get even more powerful. An extra $360 a month is $4,320 more per year. And that's every year for the rest of your life. Over a decade, that's more than $43,000 in extra income. This isn't a small change. For many, it would be a true lifeline. Now, this is a question I see all the time, and it's a really smart one. People wonder, okay, if I get this new raise, does that mean I don't get my normal cost of living adjustment, my COLA? Let's clear that up right now. The answer is a big, resounding no. It doesn't negatively affect your CLA. In fact, it makes your future CLAs even bigger. See, future COLA increases would be applied to your new higher base benefit. Think about it. A 3% COLA on an $1,800 benefit is $54, but a 3% COLA on your new higher benefit of $2,160, that's almost $65. Over time, that difference really starts to compound and makes your benefits grow even faster. It's a win on top of a win. All right, now for the other huge money question on everyone's mind. What about Uncle Sam? Is he going to be taking a slice of this new income? It's a major concern, and rightly so, especially when you're on a fixed income. And here's some more fantastic news from the proposal. For the vast majority of people receiving Social Security, this new money would likely be completely tax-free. Your benefits only become taxable once your total income goes over certain thresholds, which you can see right here. Since most beneficiaries fall below these limits, those new payments would be all yours to keep. And this is so important. The proposal includes some really strong protections for your other benefits. The whole plan is designed to help you, not hurt you. So this new income wouldn't count against you for things like SNAP or Medicaid for at least a year. And it also wouldn't jack up your Medicare premiums. The goal is simple. Let you keep the extra cash without taking away any of your other vital support. Okay, so you know what the payment would be, you know why you'd be getting it. Now let's get practical. Let's talk logistics. How and when would this money actually get to you?
This is probably the most critical piece of logistical information I can give you. If a change like this happens, it will be 100% automatic. You will not have to apply, you won't have to fill out forms or call anyone. The Social Security Administration already knows who's affected. Any real payment would simply show up in your account. And that's a really important thing to remember when we talk about scams in a minute.
And your new higher monthly payment, it would follow the exact same schedule you already know. It's all based on your birthday. So if you always get your payment on the third Wednesday of the month, guess what? You'll still get it then. It'll just be a bigger amount. Nothing changes about your payment date.
The money would arrive through whatever method you currently use. Direct deposit or a direct express card is by far the fastest and safest way. If you still get paper checks in the mail, just be aware they can take an extra week, maybe even 2, to arrive. The only thing you might need to do is make sure your information is up to date. If you've moved or switched banks, you'll want to log in to your official My Social Security account online to update your details so there are no delays.
Whew! Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. So let's bring it all home with some clear, simple advice on what to do next and an extremely important warning to keep you and your money safe. So what's your action item? Honestly, the only thing you ever need to do is check your official My Social Security account online at SSA.gov. That is the one true safe place to see your benefit statements and get accurate information. If you haven't set up an account yet, I can't recommend it enough. It's your personal secure portal to manage everything. Okay, please, everyone, listen very closely to this.
anytime there's news about more money coming from the government, the scammers come crawling out of the woodwork. So let me be crystal clear. The Social Security Administration will never, ever call you, text you, or email you asking for your personal information or asking you to pay a fee with a gift card or wire transfer to get your benefits. That is always, 100% of the time, a scam. So here are the red flags to watch for. If anyone contacts you threatening to suspend your benefits, or demanding payment, or promising they can speed things up for a fee, it is a scam. Just hang up the phone, delete the text, and please report it directly to the Social Security Office of the Inspector General.
So, let's do a quick final recap. The Social Security Fairness Act is the proposal to fix a decades-old problem by getting rid of WEP and GPO. If it passes, it would mean two payments: a big retroactive lump sum and a permanent monthly raise. Any real program like this would be totally automatic and your other benefits would be protected. And the most important thing to remember, always be on guard for those scams. This isn't some minor issue. It affects millions of dedicated public servants. You know, a lot of people still don't even know what WEP and GPO are, or that these rules are reducing their benefits. So please, share this information. Talk to your friends, your family, anyone you know who worked as a teacher, a firefighter, or any kind of government employee. The more people who understand what's at stake, the stronger the call for change will be.
And all of this leaves us with one last, very hopeful question. If a major correction like this can get so much support, what else is possible? What could be next? You know, advocates are already pushing for even bigger reforms, like a $2,400 a year boost for every single recipient. Passing the Fairness Act wouldn't be the end of the story. It could be the start of a whole new chapter in the fight for financial security and dignity in retirement.
So the big question, right? Are your benefits going to go up? Well, if you get Social Security or SSDI, you need to be paying attention. And this is especially true if you ever worked as a public servant. We're talking teachers, firefighters, police officers, you name it. The changes laid out in this bill could be a huge deal for your wallet, and understanding what's at stake is step one.
All right, let's talk numbers. The first thing on the table is a big one-time retroactive payment. The Social Security Administration would start sending out these lump sums, and the average payout is estimated to be around $6,710. Now, this isn't some bonus. Think of it as back pay, money you were underpaid because of these old unfair rules.
But you know, that lump sum, that's just to fix the past. The real game changer here is what it does for your future. The plan includes a permanent, ongoing increase to your monthly check. We're talking an average boost of about $360 every single month. This isn't temporary. It's a fundamental recalculation of your benefits that would stick with you for the rest of your life.
Now, I need to be crystal clear here. This is not some internet rumor. This is a very real piece of legislation and signed into law. We are looking at the actual concrete details of a bill that maps out how billions of dollars will be paid out.
So why is this happening? What's the problem this whole act is trying to solve? Well, this isn't about some random stimulus check. This is designed to be a long overdue correction, a fix for what millions of people see as a deep injustice that has penalized public servants for decades. Let's dig into the story behind this.
So for decades, you've had these two rules on the books that have just hammered the Social Security benefits of public servants. What you're seeing here on the screen is the goal. This is the roadmap that the Social Security Fairness Act lays out. First, get the bill signed into law. Then, trigger a massive $17 billion distribution of back pay, and at the same time, kickstart those permanent monthly increases. This is the plan they're working towards.
So to really get this, you gotta understand the problem. And it all comes down to two acronyms that have caused a world of pain: WEP and GPO, the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. Now, the original idea was to stop people from double dipping, but what ended up happening is that they punish people for their public service. Imagine you were a teacher for 30 years. You also worked a summer job your whole life and paid into Social Security, just like everybody else. But because you earned a teacher's pension, WEP would come in and just slash the Social Security benefits you earned. GPO did a similar thing to spousal benefits. The Fairness Act would get rid of both of them. Poof, gone.
And this quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. This isn't about the government giving away free money. The whole point is that this is your money. It's about finally letting people collect the full benefits they earned and paid for over their entire working lives. It's about restoring a sense of financial dignity that was taken away by a complicated and, let's be honest, unfair system.
Okay, let's get back to the money. It's really important to remember that we are talking about two totally separate payments here. You've got the one-time back payment, and then you've got the permanent monthly raise. Let's break down exactly how each one is supposed to work.
So on one side, you have that retroactive lump sum. Think of it as a catch-up check. It's a one-time deposit, averaging $6,700, meant to cover the money you were shorted in the past. But on the other side, you've got the future, and that's a permanent, lifelong increase to your check every single month, averaging an extra $360. One part makes the past right, the other secures your future.
And that monthly increase? Wow, it adds up incredibly fast. Let's just run the numbers. An extra $360 a month is $4,320 in your pocket after just 1 year. Stick with it for 5 years, and suddenly you're looking at $21,600 in extra income. A decade out, that's over $43,000. And if you stretch that to 20 years, that single change would mean over $86,000 in extra benefits. And remember, that's all before we even factor in future cost of living adjustments. This really shows the kind of real long-term stability this is all about.
And I know what you're thinking. Okay, but what does this do to my annual COLA? Well, here's the best part. It actually makes your COLA more powerful. See, future cost of living adjustments would be calculated based on your new, higher benefit amount. So if your monthly check goes up by $360 and the next year there's a 3% COLA, that 3% is now based on that bigger number. It's like a snowball effect. You get the raise, and that raise makes every future raise even bigger.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about the practical side of things. What would you actually need to do if this bill passes? And maybe even more important, what should you absolutely not do? Let's walk through how this whole process is supposed to work and how to keep yourself safe from the scammers that always pop up.
Okay, listen up, because this might be the most important part. The entire process, from start to finish, is designed to be completely automatic. Let me say that again, automatic. You would not need to apply for anything, you would not have to fill out a single form, you would not need to call anybody, and you definitely would not need to pay anyone a dime. If you're eligible, the Social Security Administration's job would be to find you and send you the money. Period.
So let's say the act passes and you want to check on your payment. The process would be super simple and totally secure. You would just log in to your official My Social Security account over at SSA.gov. Once you're in, you just go to your payment history. You'd be looking for a deposit with a label like retroactive, correction, or maybe recomputation. It's very possible the money could just show up in your account without any big letter in the mail.
Now I need everyone to listen very, very carefully. Anytime there's good news about money, the scammers come crawling out of the woodwork. So remember this, the Social Security Administration will never, ever call you, text you, or email you and ask for a fee to get your money. They will never ask you to buy gift cards or wire money. Anyone who does that is a scammer 100% of the time. Just hang up the phone or delete the message. Don't even engage.
And what about the timing? When would you actually see this new, higher monthly payment? Easy. It would arrive on the exact same day you get it now. As you can see, the payment schedule is based on your birthday, and that's not changing one bit. The only difference you'd see is a bigger number in your bank account on your normal payment day.
This is huge. The proposed law actually has powerful protections built right in. You might be worried, okay, but will this extra money mess up my other benefits? The answer is a big, resounding no. For most people, these payments would be tax-free. They're also specifically written so they won't affect your eligibility for things like SNAP or Medicaid for at least a year. Same goes for housing assistance. And no, this extra income would not cause your Medicare premiums to spike. They really tried to make sure this is a pure benefit, not something that costs you somewhere else.
So, let's just pull back from all the numbers and the rules for a second and talk about what this really means. We've gone over the details of the proposal, but the real story here is the impact that a lifelong financial boost could have on real people's lives and their futures.
I mean, what can an extra $360 a month really do? For a lot of folks, it would be absolutely life-changing. It could mean the difference between getting all your prescriptions or having to pick and choose. It could mean finally paying off that credit card bill that's been keeping you up at night. It might mean being able to afford healthier groceries or having a little cushion for when the car breaks down. Or maybe it just means being able to visit your family without worrying about the cost of gas. It's not about luxury. It's about peace of mind. It's about breathing room.
Passing the Fairness Act could light a fire and build momentum for even more reforms. There are other big ideas already being debated in Congress, including proposals for an across-the-board increase for all Social Security recipients. So this is definitely something to keep a close eye on.
So, when we talk about this $17 billion, where is it actually going? It's flowing to the people who served our communities for their entire careers. We're talking about our teachers, our police officers and firefighters, our postal workers who connect all of us, and so many other public servants.
The whole point of this law is to deliver some real, tangible fairness to the very people who were hurt by those old WEP and GPO rules. At the end of the day, this is about so much more than a check in the mail. It stands for something powerful. It's meant to be recognition for a lifetime of hard work. It's meant to be a show of respect for public service. And its goal is to finally deliver the fairness that so many people feel is long overdue. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with something to think about. This takes a big swing at what many people see as a huge, glaring problem. What's next? What other part of the Social Security system do you think needs to be fixed? Your experiences and your opinions really matter as we all think about the future of these vital programs.
All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about a massive, and I mean massive, confirmed Social Security update that is already happening. This is not a proposal. This is not a rumor. It's a real legislative change that's delivering both a big lump sum payment and a permanent monthly increase to millions of people. So let me just ask you this, right off the bat. What would an extra $6,000, maybe $7,000 do for you right now? Because that is the kind of money that has been landing in the bank accounts of millions of Americans. And that's just the start of this story. So yeah, this is a huge financial update. And like I said, this isn't some bill that might pass. It's a real change already in effect that's correcting a long-standing issue for a lot of people.
And here's the best part. It's not just one thing. It's a two-part deal. First, there's that one-time lump sum payment. Think of it as back pay you were owed. But the real headline here is the second part, a permanent for-life increase to your monthly Social Security check. Now, to really get why this is such a big deal, we have to take a quick look back at two old rules that were, frankly, just unfair. For decades, these provisions have penalized some of our country's most dedicated public servants. They're called the Windfall Elimination Provision, or WEP, and the Government Pension Offset, GPO. Now, those names sound complicated, I know. But what they did was simple, and not in a good way. They slashed the Social Security benefits of public workers, just because they also had a pension from their government job. And this quote right here, it just hits so hard. I mean, can you imagine it? You give 30, 40 years of your life to your community. You pay into the system just like everybody else. And then you retire, and you're told, sorry, you're not getting what you earned. It felt like a total betrayal for so many people. So who are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about our neighbors. Our community heroes, teachers, firefighters, police officers, postal workers, a whole range of state and federal employees who had a public pension. These are the folks who were getting shortchanged for years. But now, finally, that system has been corrected. The law that fixed this, the Social Security Fairness Act, got rid of WEP and GPO for good. And that's what's triggering this incredible two-part benefit increase. It's all about restoring the money these public servants were always supposed to get. Okay, let's talk numbers. That first part, the retroactive lump sum payment, on average, it's been about $6,710 per person. That's a huge chunk of change, calculated to make up for all those years of underpayments. But that lump sum is just the beginning. The second part, and you could argue the more important part, is that permanent monthly increase. On average, people are seeing about $360 added to their check every single month. And I really need to stress this point. This is permanent, for life. This isn't a temporary stimulus that goes away. This is a structural change to your benefits. You get this higher payment every month for the rest of your life. So let's do the math on that for a second. An extra $360 a month, that adds up to $4,320 in extra income every year. Over 10 years, that's more than $43,000. That is life-changing money. Oh, and here's another key detail that makes this even better. This new higher amount is completely separate from your annual cost of living adjustment, the COLA. In fact, it actually makes your future COLAs even bigger because that percentage increase will be calculated on top of your new higher base benefit. So you're probably asking, okay, this is great, but how does it all work? How does this money actually get to me? Let's walk through the mechanics because it's designed to be incredibly simple. And here is the absolute best news of all. It is completely automatic. You don't have to apply. You don't have to fill out a single form. You don't have to call anyone. The Social Security Administration automatically identifies everyone affected and recalculates their benefits. It just happens. Your new higher monthly payment will just show up on your regularly scheduled day. You know the drill. If your birthday's between the 1st and the 10th, you get paid on the second Wednesday.
If it's the 11th through the 20th, it's the third Wednesday, and for later birthdays, it's the fourth. The only thing that changes is the amount in your bank account is bigger.
Now, you might be worried, okay, but will this extra money mess up my other benefits? That's a totally fair question. And the good news is they thought about that. While your income goes up, this change is designed so it does not cause your Medicare premiums to spike. And for at least 12 months, it won't affect your eligibility for other crucial programs like SNAP or housing assistance.
And what about taxes? That's always the big question, right? Well, for the vast majority of people, this extra income is tax-free. Social Security benefits only start getting taxed if you have a lot of other income coming in, over 25 grand for a single person or 32 grand for a couple. So for most retirees, every extra penny is yours to keep.
All right, so with all this information, what should you do right now? Let's cover how you can check on your own situation and, most importantly, how to protect yourself from the scammers that always pop up when there's good news like this.
It's super simple. Just 3 things to do. First, log into your official My Social Security account over at SSA.gov. That is your secure home for all your info. Second, just review your payment history. Look for a deposit that might be labeled retroactive or correction. And third, it's always a good idea to make sure your bank account and mailing address are up to date.
Okay, I need you to listen to this very, very carefully. Scam warning. Anytime there's talk of new government payments, the crooks come out to play. Remember, the Social Security Administration will never, and I repeat, never call you, text you, or email you asking for money or personal info to release your benefits. If you get a message like that, it is a 100% scam. Hang up the phone, delete the text. So let's do a super quick recap. The Social Security Fairness Act fixed a huge problem by getting rid of WEP and GPO. That means a lump sum back payment and a permanent monthly raise, averaging around $360 a month. It's all automatic, no application needed, it's tax-free for most, and the only safe place to check your status is your myssa.gov account. And please, please beware of scams. You know, fixing this was a monumental step in correcting a past injustice. But the bigger conversation about retirement security in America is far from over. So it leaves us with this big question to think about. Looking ahead, what do you think is the single most important reform Social Security needs next to make sure every single retiree can live with dignity?
We're going to be breaking down a huge proposed change to Social Security that could impact millions of public servants. We'll get into what this change is, who it affects, and what it could really mean for your monthly check. And just so you know, this isn't just some rumor floating around, it's a major legislative push. All right, let's get right into it.
So I'm sure you've heard the buzz online about a big Social Security increase for certain folks. And you're probably wondering, is this for real? Or is it just another one of those things that sounds too good to be true? Well, we're here to cut through the noise and explain exactly what this proposed law would mean if it passes.
Now, what we're talking about here is not some temporary stimulus check. If this goes through, it would be a permanent, structural change to your monthly benefits. Think of it as a long overdue correction, a way to finally put the money you earned back into your pocket.
Let's start with the part everyone cares about most, the money. Because this update would come in 2 really powerful ways. First, a one-time retroactive payment to make up for past underpayments. And second, and this is the big one, a permanent boost to your monthly checks from here on out.
So under this proposal, the average monthly benefit is set to go up by about $360. And that isn't a one-time deal. We're talking about a permanent increase every single month for life. You know, that adds up to over $4,300 a year. That is a genuine financial lifeline for so many people.
And on top of that monthly raise, the proposal also includes a one-time retroactive payment to get everybody caught up. The average lump sum works out to a pretty substantial $6,710. This is designed to cover all the past underpayments, putting a big chunk of cash back in your hands right away.
And let's be crystal clear about what this money is. It's not a gift. It's not some government handout or a bonus. It's a correction. It is money you earned over a lifetime of work that, for a lot of people, was unfairly held back. This change is all about restoring fairness.
Okay, so the big question is, who actually qualifies for this? And why is this change even on the table in the first place? Well, this update is specifically aimed at a group of people who've been hit by what many consider to be really outdated and unfair rules that have been around for decades.
It all comes down to repealing 2 provisions, one called the Windfall Elimination Provision, or WEP, and the other is the Government Pension Offset, or GPO.
For years, these rules have literally slashed the Social Security benefits of public sector workers just because they also had a pension. The whole point of this new bill is to finally get rid of those penalties for good. And if you want to know who's been hurt by this, just look at this list. We are talking about people who dedicated their entire careers to our communities. Teachers, police officers, firefighters, postal workers. These are folks who paid into Social Security just like everybody else, but they got penalized for their public service. This change would finally correct that injustice.
And listen, this is not some small niche issue. Over 3.2 million people are currently affected by WEP and GPO. That's how many people would see their benefits corrected, which just goes to show you how huge this change would be if it becomes law.
All right, this is the part you've been waiting for. If this thing passes, how do you get your money? Well, the good news is the whole process is designed to be as simple and automatic as possible. Let's walk through it.
You're going to love this. The very first step is do nothing. That's right. If this law passes, you won't have to fill out any forms or apply for anything. The Social Security Administration will automatically find everyone who's eligible and recalculate their benefits. All you'd have to do is log into your My Social Security account at SSA.gov to see your new higher benefit amount.
And that new, bigger payment? It's going to show up on the exact same schedule you're already used to. Nothing about your payment date will change. If your birthday is between the 1st and the 10th, you still get paid on the second Wednesday. It's that simple. The only difference is the deposit will be bigger.
It's also super important to understand how this money would be protected. For most people, this extra income would be tax-free. It would not reduce your Medicare benefits, and it would not count against your eligibility for programs like SNAP, Medicaid, or housing assistance for a full 12 months. It's designed to be pure help, no strings attached.
Now here's where this change gets really powerful over the long run. Your yearly cost of living adjustments, your COLAs, would be calculated from this new, much higher starting point. It's like a snowball effect. A 3% COLA on a $1,500 benefit is $45, but on a new higher benefit of $1,860, that same 3% is over $55. That difference just keeps compounding year after year, meaning your benefits would grow way faster over time.
Okay, we need to get serious for a minute. Because whenever there's good news about money, you can bet the scammers are not far behind. It is absolutely critical that we talk about how to protect yourself, because criminals will try to take advantage of this.
I need you to hear this loud and clear. The Social Security Administration will never, ever call, text, or email you asking for money. They will never ask you to pay a fee, buy gift cards, or wire them money to unlock or speed up your payment. Your benefits are yours, period. Anyone who says otherwise is a scammer. End of story.
So here's exactly what to watch out for. Scammers love to create panic. They'll threaten to suspend your Social Security number, or they'll promise to get you your money faster if you just pay them a small fee. They might ask for personal info over the phone. Just remember, the real SSA only communicates through official mail or your secure online portal. So, hang up the phone, delete the text. And if you do get one of these scam calls or texts, don't just ignore it, report it by going to the Office of the Inspector General's website at oig.ssa.gov. You can help protect somebody else from becoming a victim. It's a really simple, powerful way to fight back.
All right, we've gone through the numbers, the rules, and the warnings. Now let's bring this all back home and talk about what this change could actually mean for your day-to-day life. Because this is about so much more than just a number in a bank account.
I mean, what does an extra $360 a month really do? For a lot of people, it would be life-changing. It could mean finally affording prescriptions you've had to go without. It could mean putting more food on the table. It's the peace of mind of having an emergency fund, or the freedom to finally pay down some debt. It's gas money to visit the grandkids. This isn't about luxury, this is about dignity.
And ultimately, that's what this is all about. For decades, a broken system has basically told millions of public servants that their work didn't fully count. This payment, and the permanent raise that would follow, would be the system finally saying, we see you, we value you, and we're making it right. It would be financial justice, and it's long, long overdue.
You know, this proposed law is a huge step toward fixing something that's been wrong for decades. It proves that change really is possible. And it leaves us with a really important question. Now that this injustice is finally being addressed, what's the next big challenge for Social Security to tackle to make sure every American has a secure and dignified retirement?
We're talking about a Social Security update that is, and I'm not exaggerating here, one of the biggest we've seen in a long, long time.
And listen, this isn't some proposal or a rumor. This is a confirmed change that's already rolling out, and it involves both a one-time lump sum payment and a permanent boost to your monthly benefits. We're going to break down exactly what this means for you right now.
So let me just ask you, right off the bat, could you use an extra $6,710 right now? Because that is the average one-time retroactive payment that has started landing in millions of Americans' bank accounts. Now, this isn't some kind of bonus or a stimulus check. Nope, this is a correction for money you were already owed, and believe it or not, it's just a beginning.
I want to be crystal clear about this. This is not speculation. This is an official legislative change. It's been signed into law, and it is in effect as we speak. The Social Security Administration has confirmed it, and the money, we're talking over $17 billion so far, is being paid out. This is a real structural change to your benefits.
So here's the crucial part that makes this update so incredibly powerful. It's a two-part deal. First, you've got that one-time lump sum which is designed to make up for the money you were underpaid in the past. But the second part, and you could argue this is the most important piece, is a permanent, lifelong increase to your monthly Social Security check.
Now, to really understand why this is such a big deal, we have to look back at the problem it solves. You see, for decades, a couple of rules, provisions they called them, were penalizing millions of hardworking Americans. A new law has finally fixed that injustice. So let's take a quick look at those old, unfair rules.
These two rules had names: the windfall elimination provision, or WEP for short, and the government pension offset, or GPO. And what they did was slash the Social Security benefits for folks who also earned a pension from public service, jobs where they didn't pay Social Security taxes. Basically, the system was set up in a way that punished them for their dedication to our communities. It's wild, right?
You can just feel the frustration in this sentiment. Imagine it for yourself. You give 30, maybe 40 years of your life to serving others, you pay into Social Security from other jobs you've had, and then you get to retirement and find out your earned benefits are being cut. It just felt fundamentally unfair because, well, for so many people, it was.
So who are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about the people who are the backbone of our communities. Teachers who shaped generations of kids. Firefighters and police officers who ran towards danger when everyone else ran away. Postal workers who literally connect our entire country. And millions of other state and federal employees. These are the people who are systematically being shortchanged for decades.
But now, finally, the system is making it right. The Social Security Fairness Act got passed, and it repealed WEP and GPO, which is what triggered this whole two-part benefit increase. And let's be clear, this isn't a gift. It is a long, long overdue correction. This is your money, it's your earned benefit, and frankly, it's your dignity being restored.
Okay, part one, the lump sum. On average, and that's a key word here, average, eligible folks are getting a one-time retroactive payment of $6,710. This is all calculated to cover the underpayments going back to the beginning of 2024, and it's designed to make you whole again.
Now for part two, which, this might be even bigger news in the long run. On top of that lump sum, your monthly check is being permanently increased by an average of about $360. Think about that. That's extra money for groceries, for prescriptions, for bills, every single month.
And note, this isn't some temporary boost that's going to disappear next year. This is a permanent, structural change to how your benefits are calculated. It is baked right into your Social Security foundation for the rest of your life. It's not going anywhere.
So what does that actually look like in the real world? Well, let's do the math. That average monthly increase of $360, that adds up to an extra $4,320 in your pocket every single year. You look at that over a decade, and that's more than $43,000 in additional income you can actually count on.
And here's where it gets even better. This change actually snowballs over time. See, this increase is in addition to your annual cost of living adjustment, the COLA. What that means is your future COLAs are going to be more powerful because they'll be calculated on top of your new, higher base benefit. It's like a compounding win, year after year.
Okay, so you know the what and the why. Now for the really important part, the how. You're probably sitting there wondering about the practical stuff, right? Like, when does the money show up? Do I need to apply for this? So let's break down the mechanics of how this all works. And here is the absolute best news of all. The most important thing for you to know is that this entire process is automatic. You do not need to apply.
I'll say that again. You do not have to fill out any forms. You don't have to call anyone. The Social Security Administration has already identified the 3.2 million people affected and is automatically recalculating and sending out these new higher benefits.
And that increased monthly payment? It's going to show up on your usual schedule, no surprises there. You know the drill. If your birthday falls between the 1st and the 10th of the month, you get paid on the 2nd Wednesday. If it's from the 11th to the 20th, it's the 3rd Wednesday, and if you're in that last group, the 21st to the 31st, it's the 4th Wednesday. Your new, higher payment will simply appear on your regular payday. Okay, I know what you're probably thinking. Is this extra cash going to mess up my other benefits? That is a great question, and the system is designed to prevent that from happening. While it absolutely increases your Social Security income and your long-term stability, it will not affect your Medicare premiums. And, this is huge, this extra income won't count against you for programs like SNAP, Medicaid, or housing assistance for at least 12 months.
And what about the tax man? Well, for the vast majority of people getting this money, it is tax-free. The IRS only starts to tax a portion of your Social Security benefits if your total combined income goes over $25,000 for a single person or $32,000 for a married couple. So for most people on a fixed income, this extra money is all yours to keep.
So, with all this good news, what should you actually do right now? This final section is all about the simple, actionable steps you can take to stay in the loop, make sure you get your money without any delays, and, importantly, protect yourself from scammers. Here are 3 really simple steps. First, log into your secure My Social Security account. Make sure you're on the official SSA.gov website. It's the only safe place to see your real benefit details. Second, once you're in, review your payment history. Look for a deposit that's labeled retroactive or correction. And third, just take a second to double-check that your direct deposit and mailing address are up to date. Easy. Now, this next part is incredibly important, so please listen closely. Whenever there's big news about money, the scammers come out of the woodwork. So please remember, the Social Security Administration will never, ever call you, text you, or email you and ask for money or gift card numbers or your personal info to release a payment. If you get a message like that, it is 100% a scam. Just hang up the phone or delete the message.
All right, let's do a quick flyby of everything we just covered. The bottom line is this: those unfair WEP and GPO rules are gone. That has triggered a 2-part payment, a retroactive lump sum, and a permanent monthly raise that averages